I've mentioned in the past that I've been crossed with Enter ever since the Trolls video and felt that his reviews have been declining in quality, but I figured I'd explain what I mean by that. Now, for those who don't know who Mr. Enter is, Mr. Enter is an animation critic. He pretty much looks at cartoons, whether it be for adults, kids, or even stuff on the internet. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and at the time, he seemed to be doing a great job at it. But over time, his reviews have gotten less entertaining and a lot more nitpicky, and simply put, he's kind of becoming a soccer mom. He tends to get upset at some of the littlest things, like if there's even just a hint of cruelty or mean-spiritedness. It doesn't matter if it's nowhere as over-the-top as stuff like this Squidward torture porns. If there's a bit of cruelty, he'll bitch about it. An example of this would be his Sorry Wrong Ed review, where he was complaining about how Double D wasn't too concerned with Eddie being injured, despite the fact that stuff like that happens on the show all the time, or the type of injuries Eddie's received, which again happens all the time on the show. But that was before the Trolls video. For those who don't know about the Trolls incident, pretty much Enter was saying how cyberbullies and trolls were the same thing because cyberbullies use trolling as an excuse, and he even said that he blocked the people who said that there was a difference. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people unsubscribed after that. But unlike those people, I actually tried to continue watching him and saw it as more of a dethroning moment. But then I noticed that his arguments are becoming more flimsy. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look.
In it, I said that you should keep morals far, far away from your jokes, because if you haven't guessed by now, this has been a satire, and I'm judging it as such. I'm fairly sure that they're attempting to satirize this plotline, but here's the thing, there's no sign that it's being tongue-in-cheek about this. At no point is it saying here, this is what we're trying to do, don't take anything we do seriously. These writers worked on Mad, and this kind of stuff could work there because there's that kind of acknowledgement built in.
But Teen Titans Go is a comedy show, so doesn't that already kind of imply that a lot of the morals aren't going to be very serious? I mean, granted, you can tell some serious morals, like what they do in South Park, but Teen Titans Go is for kids, and typically speaking, a lot of children's programming don't tell a lot of morals. Even then, why do they have to let people know that they're being satirical with morals? I'm pretty sure common sense would tell them when they're being satirical or not.
It's a sketch show. They can tell jokes that are totally detached from any kind of story. In an episodic show like this one, you can't get away with doing that.
Mind explaining how, good sir?
My analysis is correct. Shut up.
If you could tell from my previous reviews, I'm not a fan of satirized morals to begin with.
If that's the case, then you're taking things way too seriously.
Let's start with the theme song.
My name is Angela, hey hello, welcome to my very own show.
It's sung by a character who can't sing and doesn't flow very well at all. Angela says that she'll introduce her friends, but she doesn't.
Seriously, you're nitpicking the fucking intro? Are you really this desperate to find flaws?
Now to today's story, starring me, and not starring Nanette Memoir.
Do you not know what words mean? She's the antagonist of the episode. So yes, it stars her as much as it stars you. There are scenes with her without you.
Specific. Everything must be specific because I'm Mr. Enter. And if it's not specific, I'll bitch about it not being specific. Yes, I'm using Hyrule Bard's joke again. At least I'm being honest about it.
Where you think Brinks is? How should I know, Johnny Abadi, my dim best friend?
Wow, no really. You couldn't make exposition more obvious and more stupid. Oh yeah, Angela Anaconda has fantasies kinda like Doug, except she's a sociopath. So this shows us an alpha bitch tends to die a lot.
Really? Because I remember Nanette just getting injured in exaggerated and cartoony ways. You know, I'm starting to see why people label you as a soccer mom.
Also, how did Johnny Abadi, Angela's dim-witted best friend, get only a cupcake for lunch? Well, Cafeteria gives those out and nothing else.
'Cause this totally affects the show, right? I mean, really, at least make some sort of joke.
And the substitute doesn't like the sandwich. Also, she's a dick to Nanette because the world can be an ass to her if the main character says that she's mean.
No, it's because Nanette's exposing herself as a kiss-up. Honestly, it seems like you're trying to make the show seem worse than it actually is. But hey, who am I to question the almighty logic of Mr. Enter?
And Johnny Abadi, Angela's dim-witted best friend,
We get it! It was a badly done line. You don't need to keep hammering this joke in.
my opinion is grossly biased, I understand this. I cannot watch Shrek without blaming it for Chicken Little, Ren and Stimpy for Mega Babies, South Park for Adult Party Cartoon, or Brickleberry.
So let me get this straight. Because of all the bad rip-offs of these films, you can't enjoy the originals. You can't enjoy Shrek because of films like Chicken Little. You can't enjoy stuff like Ren and Stimpy simply because of Mega Babies. That makes no sense. Like, this is actually rather common with anything that's popular. No company can actually predict that other people will copy them.
I can't give praise to Shrek without giving praise to its ripoffs.
Yes, you can. You can actually explain why it works in Shrek and not in any of the films that tries to copy its humor.
While I really like the body swap trope, I do not like the voices are mental trope at all. What is essentially done is, let's use Gravity Falls for an example. Even though Dipper is in Mabel's body, he still has Dipper's voice. While it might on the surface seem as an improvement in terms of comedy, after all, how funny would it be if a guy's voice came out of a girl? It's sacrificing long term for short term, even in the terms of comedy. There is much more potential for jokes when it's absolutely impossible for someone to prove that they are not who they appear to be.
Correction. That's how you and your fan base feel. Not everyone has the same mentality as you. You have to realize that.
And if this change is just for the audience, once again, that's cheating. When you do this, your episode is harmed as a result, and the body swap concept is not used to its fullest potential.
Hey, Enter, has it ever occurred that maybe this is actually more so on how they want to tell the body swap story and not how you want it to be told? I mean, typically, when they do switch the voices, the episode is meant to be more comedic. And don't give me the whole, well, it's more funny when you can't tell who's who. Where's your proof on this? No, seriously, where's your proof?
I do know that there's a reason for this voice thing that is virtually only present in animation. Some live-action shows may do it for a quick gag, but they will eventually drop the voices are mental trope. This is not because people think that kids wouldn't know who is who during the body swap. It's because this is the easy way out. It's easy to switch around voices in animation. What's hard to do is match someone else's speaking style. Try talking in someone else's accent like a native speaker, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's tough. I get it. But sometimes you gotta do hard work to pull things off. Go the extra mile.
You heard it right here, voice actors. If you plan on doing a body swap episode, then you actually need to learn how to do that other person's speaking pattern, because Mr. Enter said so, and it makes it more enjoyable for him. Good fucking god, how pretentious can you be? And would you believe that this goes on for about 3 minutes? He's spending 3 minutes of a 10-minute video whining about something that he claims destroyed the entire story, when in reality, it doesn't! To all of the people who's watching this video right now, how many of you actually care about this little trope as much as Enter? How many of you actually feel that it actually ruins the episode when they swap the voices? Please, answer me that.
Here's how the shows of this era did a skipping school moral. The characters that skip school have an unusually horrible day, and the kids that stay in school have an unusually good day. And it usually involves a carnival at school. Yeah, Hey Arnold did this the exact same way. So when one fails, they all fail. I get what they're going for, I really do. They're trying to say, you never know what you'll miss if you skip school, but it's not believable in any way, shape, or form. Kids are going to know that none of this stuff is likely to happen, and the lesson will be lost on them completely. Don't sacrifice believability on the altar of a moral, because that never works out.
Enter. The main purpose of these shows is for entertainment. Entertainment. If they try making it realistic, it becomes a bit boring. You need to remember that these shows are specifically targeted towards kids. I mean, yes, you can make it enjoyable for both adults and kids, but you still need to keep the kids in mind. And one of those ways to make the show entertaining is to possibly exaggerate a certain moral. Seriously, why does everything have to be realistic for you? Cartoons are meant to escape reality, not to continue living it. I could go on like saying how the YouTube copyright video just seemed to be him projecting his anger about being terminated briefly. onto the video, or how annoying his anger was in his elf bowling review, but I think just saying that is enough. Instead, I'd like to talk about his attitude, particularly towards his critics and haters. Simply put, it's terrible. He tends to have a "I'm better than you are" mentality towards these people, and complains about them constantly. No, I'm serious. He mentions it in practically every video.
Speaking of that, people wonder why I'm so serious critiquing kids shows. Well, here's one reason. I don't think our kids should be watching characters try to murder each other. And let's do so without getting myself into hot water. Then again, people tend to get pissed at me no matter what I do, so I guess YOLO. We're talking about trolls today, and we're not even talking about mine. This isn't about me. And you know what? Don't even try the "it's for kids" excuse here. I was a kid when this show was airing, and that doesn't change my opinion in the slightest. No matter who you are looking back on the show, you're probably going to think that it's totally 90s.
Hell, he's even made journal posts responding to trolls, aka giving them unneeded attention. And you wonder why you get trolled and made fun of in the first place.
Cyberbullies, damn you!
Ow! Ugh, I'm gonna feel that in the morning. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. As I mentioned earlier, Enter is also very stingy around criticism around his project Growing Around, which is pretty much his retooling of a Shorty McShort called Flip Flopped. One of the most infamous examples happens to be the situation with Alex Mann, who actually took someone else's post from Kiwi Farms forum, and effectively this person was giving their own critique on Enter's concept of growing around, and saying how it needs to be retooled. And as you can see, it's actually very constructive and very polite, so there shouldn't be any problem, right? Apparently, Enter disagrees on that. 1. Being in college does not mean that you're in the industry or know about the industry. Being in the industry means that you're in the industry, and college is filled with out-of-date techniques. By saying you're in college is claiming to credentials that don't mean anything yet, and damage any of your claims in my eyes. What do you mean the techniques they use is out-of-date? Do you have any evidence of this? From what I've seen, college does their best to stay up to date with the times. Maybe it's the college that you go to, provided if you even are going to college. And college means that you're not in the industry, but it does give you a good understanding, just like what this person said earlier. 2. We've done this frequently. We have taken plenty of breaks. Okay, that was pointless. We only have 2 types of feedback in the following as large as mine. An echo chamber or trolls who hate everything I do. The middle is a minimal group, and they too often resemble either of the other 2 categories. Hey Enter, has it ever occurred that maybe the reason why you get so many people that don't like your content is because they honestly have problems and it really does not help that you're taking in the criticism, especially when it's on this project? Let's see. No, it is not okay to scrap months of work. That is never okay. There is almost no situation where you can't get more out of something from finishing it than scrapping it and starting over. Have you even tried Enter? So far, your current script, to be honest, really isn't that good. I actually read the original script when he first posted it, and I honestly have to say it was kind of bland. Let's see, skipping 6. 7. It's very stale. This is hard to know because you haven't substantiated your claims. How much into this have you gotten? Have you read more than one script, or have you just looked at the storyboards? I find it funny how you constantly complain about this person apparently assuming things, yet you're just assuming this person only looked at one script. Can anyone say hypocrite? Number 8. You don't know how this world works. Says who? We know pretty much all we need to know. Either you haven't looked deeply enough into what we're doing and you're making assumptions based on... Again, there's that hypocrisy. And plus, from what I've heard, you're constantly changing how this world came to be. When you can't keep it consistent, then that becomes a major problem, and it clearly shows that you're kind of making things up as you go along. So far, it really does not work so far. The fact that this all happened with some sort of war or whatever, it doesn't even make sense. Number 9. You're more interested in the way the world came to be, and I'm sure about a cartoon about SpongeBob's life that led to him to Bikini Bottom would be more interesting than the cartoon we have now. That's not the point this person was trying to make. The person was basically saying that your current concept is flawed and is more interested in a cartoon about how the world came to be is more interesting than your current concept. Pay attention. Let's see, number 10 is just him spitting in the face of this person. Classy. Or maybe you're just trolling with critiques like this that say scrap everything or don't even bother. It's fucking hard to tell. So because this person gave polite yet rather harsh critique on your project, you're outright gonna claim that this person is a troll? It's official! You don't even know what the hell the term troll means. Saying that the entire concept should be scrapped because they can't see this current one working at all and explaining why it doesn't work is not fucking trolling. Oh, but it gets even better. He actually has rules for his DeviantArt page. Rule 1. Do not mention blocked people in my comment section. There have been a rash of people who are blocked by me going around and begging people who frequent my pages to get unblocked. When these people do get unblocked, they tend to keep doing the exact same thing that got them blocked in the first place. Don't even mention them, because they have a habit of going into other websites and just spewing bile. Never mind the fact that maybe this person who got blocked actually had a legitimate problem with your attitude. Such as this! Skipping rule 2. Do not post external links, anything other than the website you are currently on. There's no point to it. Any discussion that any person wants to have with me can be done here. I don't see what the problem with an external link is. Skipping a bit more. No obvious spam. Constantly copy-pasting the same comment. Obviously intentional misspelling, etc. Wow, if you're getting that upset over just a few spam comments, you really need to see someone. Do not ask for my Skype. I only give it to very specific people. 99.99% of the people are not one of those specific people. It's essentially my business line. Well, Azu, looks like you're not getting any advice from Mr. Enter. Rule 9. I don't watch response videos, for many reasons. Most importantly, I just don't have the time. Yeah, I call bullshit on that. It would take you a lot less time to just leave a comment, and it's a lot more likely that I'll respond. But when most people make response videos, they tend to fall into the same traps. They either use the straw man fallacy, where they're arguing with something that I never meant or ever said.
That's just a straw man fallacy.
Or they're using the no true Scotsman fallacy. Wow, you really are turning into Orion. Example, no true troll will do such a thing. They basically ignore the argument in favor of semantics. But 95% of them basically ignore everything I've said in my videos to simply state their opinion. Oh really, Enter? How the hell are we ignoring your arguments when we're outright looking at them in your videos and actually somewhat restating them? I mean, in this video, you can clearly see that I'm listening into your arguments and pointing out my reasons why I feel they're invalid. Overall, Enter's become a rather poor critic, and I honestly just can't take him seriously anymore. With his terrible attitude and faulty arguments, I don't see myself becoming a fan again. And I know there's people watching this who will still like Mr. Enter regardless of what I said, and you know what? Hey, that's fine. That's your right. But as for me, I honestly can't take it anymore, and I honestly feel that there are far more reviewers out there, such as Nostalgia Critic, Bob Show, Hardcore Kid, Cartoon Hero, Pie Guy Rules, and many others. Sure, they can be hit and miss at times, but I find them a lot better since their arguments seem to be more credible, and they have a better understanding of what they're looking at, and don't take things so seriously. They know how to take a fucking joke. Not to mention that they're more respectful for their fan base if they disagree with them.
Let's be totally honest here. I think that we can all agree that satire is one of the most misused and wrongly attributed genre of anything ever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think poetry is more bastardized than satire is, mainly because most poetry I've seen from people who think they're poets believe just having one simple rhyme scheme suddenly makes them a poet. Sure, satire has to have a point, but it's easier to make a satire about something than it is to force a poem. Also, I love how for the video you have this picture where your side is represented by an angel and the other side is represented by the devil. totally doesn't scream, I'm always right and they're always wrong.
Why is this? Because stupid people use the banner of satire as a shield when they get called out for being a dick and mindlessly insulting people, philosophies, or events. That's not satire. Blindly causing controversy for the sake of it is not satire.
Well, why not? Sure, they're starting controversy for the sake of it, but that doesn't mean neither the joke nor the point of the satire is completely eliminated. So just as to quote from the beginning, Mr. Enter here believes that no matter how reasonable your argument may be, no matter how funny the joke is, and no matter what you're presenting to argue with, if it's there to start controversy, your satire fails. Not even a minute in, you're already coming off as a killjoy.
Parody is not satire, although they are closely related. Satire is essentially parody with a point beyond just being funny. But if that point is just to insult someone or something, that's not satire. That's more akin to tabloid journalism, which is generally frowned upon by people mature enough to have moved on from shitting in their pants.
Hey, you can't say that, Mr. Enter. That's insulting someone, which automatically makes your satire not satire. I mean, that's your logic. I'm just using it. Also, tabloid journalism is satire? I thought it was the means of airing the dirty laundry of celebrities who hide shameful things from the public eye. I mean, these articles aren't really meant for a joke, making them completely separate from the term satire. Sure, there's some articles that have titles like Hillary Clinton adopts an alien child, but I think that's more so done for parody than it is for satire. That is, compared to celebrities having children or cheating on each other. You know, this is already starting to remind me of your Trolls video, where you would take specific crimes, tack the word troll on it, and expect people to take your word for it. How about giving us proof that people consider tabloid journalism as satire? And unlike your Trolls video, this video has no links to its sources whatsoever, neither in the description, nor anything being stated in the video. The only link that you even have is the link to the written rant of this video.
Today we're going to be talking about satirizing philosophies, attitudes, and we're going to be talking about satirizing people. It is actually very different on how you do each, and that is one of the many misconceptions about satire. Here's another one. Satire is a lot closer to criticism than it is to teasing or trolling. The truth of—
Not really. I've seen people tease someone over something stupid they've done, and even seen trolls troll someone for something stupid, and a point did come out of it. Have you not even heard of Jim81 Jim when he trolled the entire commentary community by not just pointing out its flaws, but having them show their flaws in response to prove its point? Or, if you want a more relatively recent example, when I went under the name HiddenMu49 to troll Double S Animations into exposing himself as a horrible person. You say it can't be done, yet it has been done.
The matter is that satire will inevitably piss people off, but it is not the point of satire to piss people off. Satire is supposed to exaggerate the worldview of those who agree with you to speak specifically to those who don't, with the purpose of preventing them from becoming the characters that you have created.
I thought satire was to make a joke while making a point in said joke, not to have others convince those who disagree with you. Yeah, remember that quote you said at the beginning? So guess what, guys? If people don't agree with your satire, then just have the people who do agree with you try to convince the non-believers to agree with you.
But now that that's out of the way, it's time to piss people off. Like I said, you can't do satire without pissing someone off. Expecting no one to get offended with you is stupid and illogical.
Meanwhile, we have a reply from you to the Mungo Man trying to defend the video image from someone who didn't agree with it, saying it is a parody of a satire, even though there's no context at all to that being the case, neither in the video nor the description of the video. Let's also look back at that lovely quote you brought up earlier. You say satire is like running for office. You fail every time if you only care to please everyone. And yet, here you are saying satire will always piss someone off. So good job. We all suck at satire, including me.
So, who is satire supposed to talk to? Well, let's start with this. There is no point in conveying satire to the people who already agree with you. The purpose of satire is more or less to make a moral or political change in the wider world. The point of satire is to make a better world.
I'm sorry, how many times is the definition of satire going to be changed during the span of this video? So far, it's happened twice. I thought satire was trying to make a joke while proving a point with your joke. Who says it has to be political and change the world in some way? Why can't I just joke about how my bunny won't stop peeing on me every time I try to take him outside, and call him the poopinator because he won't stop crapping on the floor? It's not political or world changing. I'm just merely saying rabbits can be dickbags. And yet I can't hit the little guy.
In essence, the point of satire is to make people agree with you by making what they believe in look ridiculous. That is not an easy task.
I beg to disagree. as I said earlier, my bunny is the goddamn poopinator.
And it's definitely not done by, I don't know, making up lies about what people believe in or who they are, blindly insulting people, giving away someone's address and telling other people to beat the shit out of them, sending Zelda Williams images of her father Robin hanging from the ceiling and then making fun of her when she left the internet because of it.
Oh, yay! Another thing you haven't learned from your Trolls video. How about giving us proof instead of just saying it? Now, I'm not saying these things aren't horrible occurrences. They really are. But unless you can actually validify that these actions were done and or being defended under satire, then you're blowing smoke. Secondly, what if it wasn't the satirist doing that someone's personal info got out? What if it was the person themselves who gave it out because they were that stupid? I've had that happen before with a guy known as Xeon the Hero Hog. I said his art was crap, and he gave me his personal info. So, what, do you want me to just say, hey, good job for giving me your info? No, I'm going to say you're an idiot for doing that. How about instead of seeing things like this from the viewpoint of the accuser is the one at fault, how about actually checking out the background? Then again, cutting corners has been your shtick lately now, hasn't it?
I have a feeling I'm kind of pissing off a bunch of people already.
You know, for someone who keeps saying you shouldn't intentionally piss people off, you certainly love to bring up the fact that you're probably going to be pissing people off. I'm getting mixed messages here.
On anarchy, that means you probably don't have much faith in people like leaders or voters. But if you do want anarchy, then you have a lot of faith in people not to backstab each other and follow rules that no one is enforcing. But that's a story for another day.
Then why bring it up? Bruh. I could make an entire skit off of that subject alone, and you can't even bother presenting your audience with a good satire and how it should sound? What kind of arguing is this?
And hell, I've made more controversial arguments like, just because you're on the internet, it's not okay to be a dick. I mean, it's really, really easy to satirize stupid things people do on the internet.
That's true, actually. Hell, I'm doing it right now.
So, a man sees an advertisement on the television about a new store that's just opened up. He gets in his car and breaks the speed limit trying to get to this store. He doesn't even put the car in park as he runs out and bursts through the front door of the store. He shouts, "First!" getting the attention of everyone who was already there. Also, he left his wallet at home and was planning on shopping later at his own convenience. I don't get why people shout first on internet videos. I really don't.
Because they think they're being funny? Are we really questioning that?
I don't get either. College. Did you guys know that college tuition has risen 4 times the rate of inflation in the United States?
Okay, so you could provide this as an example of satire, but you say your story on anarchy is for a different subject. I'd also bring up that satire should also be funny, but then again, Enter's execution of telling jokes is always poorly done. Seriously, he could tell the duck and grapes joke to people and he'd make it sound dull. Oh shit, I just did a satire. I better not piss anyone off or I fail at my joke.
That is absolutely insane. I went down to a recently opened college and asked why their tuition was $25,000 per year, when they essentially didn't have much of a reputation and they weren't providing any books or including dormitories and that. The guy running the place told me that this was the only way he could afford paying off his student loans.
This isn't even satire anymore. You're just telling us college is expensive. Hey, genius, I think you're forgetting the part of satire where you're supposed to have a joke.
That's satire. I picked a topic that's relevant and one that I truly believe in. College tuition prices are highly unreasonable.
And yet you can't even do that right!
On the new standardized test, I think they're calling it the USUCK. One of the questions there is it worth selling away 20 years of your life for a college education? And if you mark anything but C definitely, then it's wrong. Hell, even B yes isn't good enough for half credit. Needless to say, I don't really agree with standardized tests. And coincidentally, they're fucking easy to satirize. I mean, when they're cutting art and gym for more test prep, standardized tests must be really important. I mean, filling in the exact same answers as everyone else means that we should value A, individuality and creativity, B, high test scores, C, good teachers and good students, D, everyone being all the same.
But standardized tests are used to see if you retained knowledge on the subject you're studying. I mean, you can't just bitch about how your creativity and individuality is being suppressed because your test paper was marked wrong when you said an animation keyframe is a type of door locking mechanism. It's great you want to stick out amongst the rest of the students, but you're still wrong.
Now, that was actually a question made by a satire of the Common Core Aligned standardized tests by an 8th grade girl. She gets satire. Do you? I mean, it's true. Everyone being the same helps people get jobs working in factories until they get replaced by robots, or they get jobs in offices and then get replaced by people who thought outside of the box. I didn't even need to say that standardized tests are stupid to say that standardized tests are stupid. That's the power of the genre. Personally, I think that innovation and creativity are the values that will lead us to holding our place in the future. I'd be wrong, though, if I said that our schools were completely disincentivizing creativity.
Even though you just did. a few seconds ago.
In reaction to these tests, children's bodies are reacting in all kinds of creative ways, like throwing up and wetting themselves. We have never seen results like this before. Strange how I read in a Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure book where the main character goes into the future. There, he can choose to go to school where he's given a test that measures human children to robotic standards.
Okay, this is a major problem I've been having with Mr. Enter's videos as of late, and this is coming from someone who used to be a fan of his work. Dude, you drag out your points far too long. I've been sitting here for about 4 minutes, and you've only listed 2 examples, and one you said wasn't even relevant. Honestly, this is why these videos are often a chore for me to sit through. You're so slow with your point that it sometimes makes me wonder if you even know what your topic is anymore. Just bring up one example of correctly done satire, and that's it. That's all you need.
One thing that you cannot do with satire is backpedal. When you create an act of satire, you make your opinion known. You need to mean what you say. That's why trolling is not satire, as many people claim it is.
Well, it can be. Granted, not all trolling is done as satire, but I've seen it done before. I bring you back to my example of Jim81 Jim. Another thing I also have to ask, and this isn't just to Mr. Enter, but this is to anyone watching. Is it just me? Or does this guy get extremely touchy when it comes to something like trolling? Even when it's not so much done to him, nor are there any cases of it being presented on his videos. I just find it rather odd considering he's practically shooting himself in the foot for shit that doesn't even happen constantly, especially on his newer content.
A troll will likely tell someone to, I don't know, delete System 32 on their hard drive, despite not believing that's a good idea. Oh wait, that's not trolling, that's bullying.
Wait, I thought you said trolling and bullying were the same thing. Hey, remember what you said earlier about backpedaling? Good job, dipshit, you're doing that right now. Also, no, it's not bullying. Telling someone to install something harmful for their computer isn't bullying. That's just playing a really mean prank on someone. You might as well say putting a bucket of water above an open door for someone to open isn't a prank but bullying. Which it isn't.
Even if he does it to 50 different people he's never met before in his life. Despite people telling me that a troll doesn't target specific people, and a bully targets the same person over and over again, that's apparently the difference between the two.
What about the people saying trolling and cyberbullying is based on intent? Also, I thought this was a rant about satire. Suddenly this just became another rant about trolls over the internet. How ironic that at the start of this video he says stupid people misuse satire and use it as a defense. And yet, here he is, making another rant about trolls while hiding the actual subject under the term satire.
Okay, now I'm just confused. You trolls are all gonna have to give me a calm, rational, and consistent definition of what a troll actually is. Or I just might be confused for life.
Oh sure, we can do that. Just unblock those people who had a different mentality from yours and we'll all be buddies again. Okay? Okay.
Which brings us to satirizing specific people, somehow.
Dude, if you don't even know how you got this far into the video, then I'm fearful what comes next.
My best advice for this is usually that this is an unwise thing to do. Like I said, the purpose of satire is to incite a change of some kind. A satire of someone in particular is not likely going to be appreciated by the person at hand.
No shit. Of course the guy being made fun of isn't going to appreciate being made fun of. But here's the thing. The satire isn't specifically for the guy being made fun of. So generally, the guy doing the satire doesn't care what they think they say about them. Also, I'm getting very mixed messages here. You say satire is obviously going to piss someone off, and yet you say satirizing people is unwise because it could piss someone off.
At best, you might get a haha, that is so true, but it's not usually going to incite a change in the person themselves.
Well, let's face it, if that were true, you wouldn't be here bitching about trolls and cyberbullies being the same now, would you?
Usually a satire towards a specific person has less admirable intentions than simple critique.
Oh, you mean like your own videos?
It revolves around something like, this person shouldn't be famous, or this person shouldn't spout their worthless ideas.
And that's why I blocked everyone with a different mentality than mine. Yeah, take that saying.
And this is going to get more controversial than I want it to be. It's really easy to satirize racist and bigoted people out there, but here's the thing, what's the fucking point? They're not going to change, and all you're going to do is give them more attention than they rightfully deserve.
Well, I could say the same thing about you bitching about domestic relationship shit. Yeah, it's terrible and it happens a lot, but so does racism and other forms of prejudice, and here you are saying there's no point in satirizing them. You know, I feel that guy's halo should be replaced with a big black pot, because the kettle's getting offended by the names you're calling it.
Some people deserve even less than negative attention. They deserve no attention at all.
You know, now that I think of it,
The don't feed the trolls philosophy is part of the bystander effect. If you ignore the problem, it just might go away. It's not. And as our lives become more entwined with the internet each and every year, the problem is going to get worse and affect more and more people. Imagine you, 10 years down the road, being unable to get any jobs because some trolls didn't like your opinion, and began to run a hate blog that operates half a decade after you've given up. So, what can be done about it? Stop tolerating it on any level.
You, sir, are a fucking idiot!
Now, these are the kind of people who wrote the tabletop game Racial Holy War, or the type of people who wrote the tabletop game Fatal. For those who don't know, these are pretty much tied for the worst thing in the world. The worst piece of media in existence. Like, Racial Holy War is exactly what it sounds like.
yet you won't explain what tabloid journalism is or present proof of your claims about cyberbullies and trolls to prove your point. I don't get it either, people.
I'm just betting that someone out there is claiming that either of them are satire, or that a cataloging website that's pretty much a collaboration between the two is some kind of satire in their own twisted head. You'd have to be an idiot to think that's funny.
Hey, nice shot at Encyclopedia Germanica you made there. Also, this boils down to the kind of humor people prefer. You keep forgetting that humor is entirely subjective, and what you may think is disgusting may be funny to other people. Now, I'm not saying I'd agree to playing these type of tabletop games, but I've played plenty of Cards Against Humanity, and while I have read out loud some really horrific stuff, I still laughed because of how awkward and dark it twisted into. Maybe you just don't get the joke. Which, if that's the case, that's more so on you than it is on the one doing the satire. Unless it's really cryptic, but you seem to be able to explain the meaning of it well, so... Fuck the establishment!
See, now that I told you about these things, you're going to be interested in whether they really exist. You're going to seek them out, you're going to be scarred for life, unless you're fucked up as the people who came up with them.
Or, you know, we could be rational people and not get scarred over something like a controversial tabletop game. Not everyone is you, Enter.
It doesn't matter how funny or easy these things are to satirize. Talking about them at all gives them more attention than they deserve.
Yet, didn't you just recently make an animated atrocity on a Family Guy episode that discusses domestic abuse? Isn't that giving a controversial topic attention?
Back to people. I could easily make a writer on some cartoon I don't like be obsessed with giving children nightmares. It would not be a good satire. For one, it's based on an assumption, and assumptions can be and are often wrong. Two, fair or not, it's not going to make the writer not be obsessed with giving children nightmares.
Well, hey, if Big Fat Liar can make a satire about dickbag directors, I don't think what you brought up should be any more challenging. Just don't turn the writer into a smurf.
And it's not going to change the minds of the people who like the show either. If it did one or the other, it might be worth it, but it doesn't do that. On that note, did the Family Guy episode Tea Peter actually get anyone to quit the Tea Party? No, it didn't. Just blindly insulting people or philosophies goes against the point of satire.
No, it doesn't. You can insult people and still get a point across. What do you think I've been doing the whole time? Thank you, text. You've lied to me yet again.
Even the people or philosophies that you don't like. That college humor short, My Little Brony. Did it get anyone to quit being a brony? Not directly, I don't think so. Not to mention they reused the exact same joke in their other brony short. Come on guys, you're better than this.
Well, let's just take a look at the word stereotype, shall we? Stereotype. Noun. A widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. The stereotype for a brony is often pictures as a grown-ass man playing with pony dolls, in rather sick or depressing ways. So yes, college humor is right. It was a joke about a stereotype. Plus the video was about 2 minutes long, so it's not like the joke dragged itself out to the point where it just overstayed its welcome. On top of that, while I may not be keeping up with the show anymore, I do think Friendship is Magic is a good show, and even I thought the video was funny. You're just a buzzkill.
Yes, contrary to popular belief, satire can be bad.
Well, no one is arguing that at all. Also, your idea of bad satire is anything making fun of someone. I don't think I'll be taking your word for it anytime soon.
But if I'm making fun of someone's beliefs or actions, then how the hell am I going to get them to agree with me? Satire's hard, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if we're talking to a stubborn dipshit like you, but hey, you're not my only audience.
Step 1. Don't create falsehoods. Create exaggerations. Step 2. Don't be afraid to be offensive, but... Step 3. Don't intentionally try to offend people.
Okay, I am fully convinced you don't listen to yourself as you speak. You say don't be afraid to be offensive, but don't try to offend people. How the fuck are those two even possible? That's like saying, okay, make your paper 4 pages long, but don't make your paper anywhere near 4 pages.
Let me put it this way. With satire, you can piss off people, but don't ever piss on people.
Well, why not? I mean, you seem to have no problem pissing all over Family Guy or modern SpongeBob.
Shorts like that My Little Brony thing or Tea Peter pisses on people. And that's completely ignoring the fact that yes, some bronies are incredibly obsessive, and I don't give a shit about politics.
Yet you compare satire to running for office. God, you're an idiot. And going back to the college humor skit, they weren't making fun of all bronies. They were mocking the stereotype of the bronies. You even said it yourself. They go for one joke for 2 minutes. If they're just going off by one stereotype, I doubt they're bashing all bronies in general.
If it's any indication, bad satire is second only to torture porns in what I choose to review.
So, making fun of someone is second to watching someone forced into being tortured? Something tells me if you look at satire as something more than a verbal whip to the face, then maybe you might actually sound happier with your life.
Sure, a well-done satire can be the funniest thing in the world, but only if the satirist puts in effort.
I completely agree. So, you want to go first?
Being funny takes time, care, and dedication to the right causes.
Right causes? The fuck does humor have to do with the right causes? Whatever happened to being funny just because you want to try and be funny? So what, am I holding a Comedy Central skit about donating to cancer patients? Well, I guess I better remove all the jokes about bald people in my skit. Don't want my satire to fail now, do I?
If you're just saying this person is an idiot again and again and again, that's not satire. That's below tabloid journalism, actually.
Yes, saying someone is an idiot over and over again is worse than calling President Bush a cocaine addict.
You, sir, are an idiot.
Once again, if you spend all this time and money on animating shit, you've animated shit. If you spend time, care, and dedication to just pissing on a specific group or person, then that's all you're doing, and you really need to reevaluate your life.
Or, grow a fucking spine and suck it up. Also, I really don't think you're in any room to talk about people needing to reevaluate their lives for pissing on people, considering that's exactly what you just did. You just pissed on the people who find that kind of humor that satirizes other people funny. Now get off my stage.
At the very least, when I review an episode of Family Guy, don't defend his actions under satire.
Well, fuck you too, scrub.
Why? Well, over the past 2 years that I've been doing this, I've gotten a lot wiser.
Cheers.
Like I said, this is coming from someone who used to be a fan of Mr. Enter's work. I used to think he was good at pointing out the flaws with the things he was criticizing, and that's what I liked about his content. He was good at what he did. After a while, he just started dropping so much in quality, and even in this, he shows how much of a superiority complex he has. That's honestly how I feel he's dropped. He's thought so highly of himself, he feels anyone relating to his examples must think exactly like him, or they're wrong for doing so, even if he knows absolutely nothing about the subject he's covering, such as animation companies, general studies, humor, politics, etc. This video is no different. It also doesn't help that Mr. Enter's video structure has gone so much to shit as of late. His videos either begin with a drawn-out tangent, an anticlimactic ending, or both. Lately, his videos have been the latter. In fact, to add on to your last point, you say don't defend Family Guy under satire, even though it's going to happen regardless if you tell people not to. I can also direct this to all the times you say trolls and cyberbullies are horrible people and they're the same thing, and they shouldn't be defended. It keeps on happening. So just like what you said in your controversial subjects, why give it attention? If you know you're not going to fix shit, then why bother with it? Then, of course, there's how you bash people for thinking differently from you. You'll say something is disgusting, and if someone doesn't think so, then they're sick in the head. I thought we're not supposed to intentionally piss on people, as you claim to say. Yet, here you are pissing on anyone who disagrees with you. And if you're going to say that wasn't satire, that was you honestly just stating your thoughts, then good job, you're worse than the people you're bitching about. I can see what you mean when you say backpedaling can make your satire flimsy, but here's the thing. There's backpedaling, and then there's being a hypocrite, which is what you've been during this entire video. Well, I'll wait to be blocked for having a different opinion from you. Call me the biggest asshole all you want, Enter. I won't deny it. At least one of us can admit to something.
It is okay to not like me. It's even okay to criticize my actions, or what I create.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Enter. That's why I'm making this video. However, I'm going to do my best to be nice in this video, and I'm going to be mostly defending Mr. Enter instead of attacking him. Because honestly, Mr. Enter has had a problem with harassment for a few years now, and he wants to know what he can do about it.
So, let me ask a question, just out of curiosity. What should I be doing about this harassment?
I'm glad you asked, Mr. Enter. I'm going to do what I can to help you out. Now, for those of you who don't know, I did a video with Digby about Mr. Enter's crowdfunding campaign. The video got quite a lot of backlash. In fact, I don't think I've ever received so much backlash on a video before. Me and Digby had a lot of trouble working together, and even then I was only in 1/3 of the video. I had a lot of people contacting me and telling me what problems they had with the video, even though 9 out of 10 of their problems were about what Digby said and not about what I said. Yeah, guys, I didn't insult the Alpha J show. Digby did that. If you have a problem with something Digby said, bring it up with him and not me. Digby eventually took the video down and said he wasn't really proud of it. Now, I'm not just going to throw Digby under the bus and say, oh, every problem with that video is Digby's fault. I didn't do nothing. Because I did insult Mr. Enter a little bit in that video. But in this video, I'm going to be mostly defending him. So let's dive right into it.
This isn't going to be a fun video. And yes, I know that this isn't the first time that I made a video like this, but each and every time that I do, I think that it's going to be the last time that I have to do this. Although, this time around, I'm fairly certain that this isn't going to be the last time either.
And that's smart, Mr. Enter. Once you say this is the last time I'm going to be doing this, and then you do it again, people are going to comment, you said you want to do this again, but here you are, doing it again! It gets very annoying very fast.
And I will be mentioning people by name.
Yeah, I think you should do that. If people are going to mention you by name, then you should mention them by name. If they did a video on you first, then you should have every right to do a video on them back and mention them by name. Granted, you might have a few people calling you a bully for it, but if you do the opposite, you'll get a whole bunch of comments saying, who are you talking about? Why aren't you mentioning people by name?
Back in 2014, I made an edible animation on the Shane Koyczan poem Troll, and in it, I said some things that people found contentious. The most infamous statement within was that I believe that trolls and cyberbullies were the same thing.
Okay, I have to disagree with you on that one, Mr. Enter. It's not only that you said that, but you said anyone who disagrees with you needed to shut the fuck up.
And to those who are saying there's a difference between cyberbullying and trolling, shut the fuck up.
I mean, it just comes across as a little Lilliputish. You were also just a little too overdramatic in the video.
And I mean no exaggeration here. I now know that there is evil in the world.
Really? Trolling made you realize there was evil in the world and not, all the other stuff that is way worse? Granted, he does say not every troll is a bully, but still, he should have taken that other part out.
Back then, my biggest troll or hater or whatever was, what, Clay Claymore?
Why does Clay Claymore keep popping up everywhere? The guy only has 1.5K subs, but he really makes an impact.
He found himself nestled within the hellhole known as the commentary community.
Yeah, that is a pretty good description of it.
I feel like this is Enter sort of projecting, telling his audience preemptively that he's a creep or a horrible person of some kind before he gets outed for it by someone else. I mean, not saying he is necessarily, even though he has done some rather pedophilic illustrations in his past.
That is an absolute lie. I've drawn children, fully clothed and going on non-sexual adventures. But if that's what you consider pedophilic, we got some problems with the entire animation industry. Because we have, Hey Arnold, Kids Next Door, Rugrats? Oh my god, those are babies! There's Fillmore, there's Recess. Do I even need to go on about this?
Yeah, people seriously need to stop calling Mr. Enter a pedophile. I mean, the evidence to support that theory is incredibly flimsy. He talks about children's cartoons, he has a creepy beard, and he claims to be asexual. Okay, so what? Calling him one is very slanderous, and I'm pretty sure if he was one, we would have hard evidence by now.
Turkey's existence is what I've got by not punching back, and I'm running out of reasons not to punch back. These people commentate on whoever they want because they think these people are not going to respond or fight back. But one day, the bear will bite back. Not just me, but maybe somebody else. So many of them just want to keep shit-talking, and they're doing it to someone they think will not respond.
Well, I don't think they believe they will get away with it. I mean, after all, you do have a very rabid fan base. But I do really think you should start punching back more. I know some people may say, well, that's what they want, but at this point, people are going to do videos on Mr. Enter regardless.
I don't like him because he's he takes things too seriously. He's like, that wasn't funny at all. I think it's best if everybody should just watch my Rhapsody Kids video, which came out first, and then watch his and see which is the better one.
Okay, and this is a problem I do have with a lot of Mr. Enter's videos. He keeps putting text on screen instead of, re-recording. I'm glad the text is big enough for people to see if they're watching the video on their phone, but even then a lot of people listen to a YouTube video while they're working out, washing the dishes, or playing a video game, and they might miss that text.
So, back in my past, I did insult writers, call them idiots, say that they should be ashamed of their work, and such like that. but I have never ever issued a death threat or a threat of physical harm. But I never told anyone to harass. Neither did I. In short, if this is all you have on me, you have nothing. At all.
Yeah, Mr. Enter did a review of a SpongeBob episode, and a lot of his fans attacked the guy who wrote the episode. But the thing is, Mr. Enter didn't directly tell his fans to attack that person. Us commentators do videos on people, and our fans often attack. We never send our fans to attack someone, and that's normally our defense. So if we're going to use that defense, but say it doesn't count when Mr. Enter does it, we're kind of being huge hypocrites. However, Mr. Enter, please keep in mind that this same logic can apply to you.
And Rebel Taxi, if you hear this, don't pretend that you have less influence than I did. You right now are the biggest channel in the cartoon community. Back when I made my worst, most harsh insults towards writers, I had less than 20,000 subscribers. You have more than 10 times that amount.
Yeah, but Mr. Enter, you have a way bigger audience than Turkey Tom.
But just for an example of how dumb this video is, the mysterious Mr. Enter literally says that Pan Pizza shouldn't have been talking badly about him when he had 20,000 subs and Pan over 100,000, yet he, someone with nearly 300k, makes a video with me in the thumbnail and focuses a good 30% of the video on me.
Back when I made my worst, most harsh insults towards writers, I had less than 20,000 subscribers. You have more than 10 times that amount.
I'm just saying that hypocrisy can go both ways.
If you watched my videos, then you would have known that. If you didn't, are you just hating me because you think it's cool?
That is very true. A lot of people hate on Mr. Enter because it's the popular thing to do. You're almost guaranteed to get a lot of views if you do a video on him.
And besides, I absolutely suck. I'm the worst person ever. Haven't you heard that my editing is shit? Even though I've got 2 editors now?
Yeah, in Mr. Enter's old videos, his editing was pretty terrible. He would keep playing the same loop of animation over and over and over again. It was very annoying to watch. I'm glad he hired 2 editors to help him out. I myself have hired Joshua and Pufferfish to help me out with my videos. Some people have criticized Mr. Enter and told him he should just get better at editing instead of hiring people. And while that is true, the important thing is that the video looks better.
Even movies and cartoons that legit trigger traumatic feelings, I persevere to the very end.
Okay, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people make fun of Mr. Enter. Anytime he watches something that's edgy or has gross out humor, he freaks out so much about it, and he's a grown man. Guys, I can barely make it through this. This is so disgusting. Oh my god, I can't believe someone would animate that. Bro, it's a cartoon. Calm down. And I think this is 90% of the reason why people hate on Mr. Enter. He has a very weak stomach. And the other 10% is his annoying voice. Granted, my voice is annoying as well, but I do what I can to hide it.
I started an Indiegogo project that didn't make its goal. That's scandalous. I mean, like, when I think of disasters, I think of a campaign that hits 4 times its budget, keeps its backers in the dark, makes an insulting trailer, neglects to give anyone backer rewards, and then delivers a mediocre project that looked worse than the concept art years late.
Mr. Enter, while those crowdfunding campaigns are worse than yours was still pretty bad. You only made 3% of your goal, as far as I know. And you were asking for more dollars than you had subscribers. Butch Hartman was asking for $100,000 less than you. And he's the guy who made Fairy On Parents and Danny Phantom. And before someone tells me that Butch Hartman's crowdfunding campaign was worse, guess what? I did a video about him too. Just because his was worse than Mr. Enter's, it doesn't mean Mr. Enter's was perfect by any means.
My Indiegogo campaign was far worse than that because it didn't hit its budget. Like 44% of crowdfunding campaigns.
It didn't even reach 1/10 of its budget. And I didn't see anyone say that your crowdfunding campaign was the worst. Maybe there was a few people, but it certainly wasn't me or Digby.
I mean, a lot of people have threatened to dox me, or those that I know. Like easy peasy.
The mysterious Mr. Enter may very well be, bar none, the worst reviewer on all of YouTube. But despite all of the vitriol surrounding him, I was able to find very little actual juicy drama that he was involved in, to the point I considered going out of my way and personally trying to dox him, just to maybe not publish the dox, but maybe somewhere in there I'd find something that's actually interesting.
And apparently he's not the person who doxed me or my editor, but apparently he knows this person.
Mr. Enter, I can understand why you thought that was a threat. If I was in your shoes, I would have probably came to the same conclusion. But he said he was considering doxing you to see if he could find something juicy you were involved in. He even said he wasn't going to publish the dox, just see what he could find if he doxed you. It's a bit concerning, and I wouldn't like it if someone said that to me, but it's not a threat.
But the people who like me can be pieces of work themselves too, and they're not getting off the hook. You know, like the girl who said she would jump off a balcony if I didn't say that I loved her. But we'll be talking about my cyberstalkers a little bit later.
Yeah, I can totally relate to how you feel about that, Mr. Enter. That actually happened to me. But at this point in the video, Mr. Enter stops mentioning names. Don't know if he forgot or he just wants to protect his fans, but it just came across as a little weird to me.
You're not creative or special. Every single one has pulled that card. You're just a dime a dozen crazy that I want nothing to do with.
Mr. Enter's fans are incredibly annoying and don't really help his situation at all in any way whatsoever. For example, this comment from someone saying they unsubscribed after they saw my video I did with Digby on Mr. Enter, telling me that they were unsubscribing from me. It's kind of weird because their comment implies they just saw the video I did with Digby, even though the video I did with him was down at the time. But I just lost a subscriber. They were probably a very hardcore fan of mine and commented on a lot of my videos. Now there's this thing you can do on YouTube where you can search all the comments someone left on your videos. And guess how many comments this person left before this one? Only one! And it was about Mr. Enter's video, the one I'm covering now! And there were a few comments on Digby's videos like, I normally like videos about Mr. Enter, but this one was crap. It's so easy to debunk this guy, but you guys did a shit job. Then I would go onto their channel and see that they're subscribed to Mr. Enter. You guys are not fooling anyone, we can see right through your crap.
People are no longer able to just get off the internet. People have jobs that rely on using the internet. People try to have reasonable discussions on the internet. And people have kids they know use the internet.
And that is very true. There's even a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called The Internet Ruined My Life. So, all in all, I'm not really a fan of Mr. Enter. I did enjoy some of his videos, but his content really isn't for me. But if you enjoy it, go right ahead. I won't stop you. And if you don't like Mr. Enter, I hate to break it to you, there's nothing really juicy he has done. Just a few small things here or there. I really think it's time that drama with Mr. Enter just dies already.
Mr. Enter. He needs no introduction. He's one of the most famous figures in the cartoon community that is currently infamous to this very day. Long story short, from December 2019 to February 2020, Mr. Enter did a series of videos called Nickorama, where he took a look at every single official Nicktoon. I might as well give my thoughts on the videos for the most part. I really had a blast with every single one of these videos for the most part, and it was actually fun to make the guesses on what Enter's rankings for each Nicktoon would be. Sure, while he did give opinions that I don't agree with in terms of shows he didn't like and shows that he found neutral opinions towards, I do respect his opinion, and I don't mind him not liking a show I like or don't like, as long as he's not misinformed and he explains things as hard as he can. There are definitely videos in Mr. Enter's Nickorama videos that I do not like. One of them that I was originally going to cover was his Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review for the one line, the animation is really bad because of stilted movements and them looping frames of animation alone, which is the reason why I think that it's the worst of the Nickorama videos. However, there's nothing else for me to talk about in that video other than that alone. So for today, instead, I'm going with what I think is Mr. Enter's second worst video in his Nickorama series, on his review on the Monsters vs. Aliens TV show. Now, I'm not making a commentary on this video because I love the series and franchise to death, and I can't stand hearing other people's opinions on it. That's far from the truth. For the film, I just think that it's okay, while the show I don't like because of how forgettable I think it is. No, I'm doing a commentary on this video because of how misinformed and poorly explained it is. Why is it misinformed exactly? Well, keep in mind that throughout the entire video, Mr. Enter is going to go on and say that he didn't watch the movie, yet it's going to bite him in the butt majorly in one part of the video. And what do I mean when I said that Mr. Enter poorly explains himself in the video? Well, let's find out.
Meow. While I still haven't seen the movie, I did look up what it's about, and the general reactions to it. For example, I know that the movie was criticized for very bad animation. Monsters vs. Aliens was criticized for having very uncanny expressions and looking horrendous. As Jello Apocalypse put it, all of the characters look like Mad Max characters. The show manages to carry over this tradition in a frightening new way. I just want you to see some of these clips. Look at how bad this is. This is the worst looking show of the entire lineup. There is no worse looking Nicktoon than this. This is the poorest quality animation out of all of them. 2D, 3D, I don't care. Jimmy Neutron looks better than this does, and that was made in 2002. I was gonna say that this show looks like a very early PlayStation 2 game, but no, I want to show you something. This is some animation from the video game 40 Wings. It's on the PlayStation 1. It was made in 1999, and it looks better than this show. I'm being dead set honest when I say that 90s CGI cartoons look better than this. I bet even Reboot looks better than whatever the hell this is. What happened? Was it a lack of budget? I mean, after Penguins and Kung Fu Panda, I would assume that they'd be given some extra money to play with. Susan looks like a Barbie doll. Like those old Uncanny as Bratz cartoons, they look better than this. It's just so plastic and ugly.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you guys in advance that the majority of this video is him talking about the animation and how it looks worse than any other Nicktoon, and that it looks worse than a PS1 game and Reboot. Enter, you do realize that there's more to a show than just its animation, right? I have no problem with you going over the animation and explaining what's wrong with it. That's what a lot of other reviewers do when they're talking about a TV show or movie. However, here's my problem with what Mr. Enter does it in this video. He's incredibly vague about it. Sure, in one part of the video that I showed, he says that the reason why he doesn't like this show's animation is because of it being all plastic and ugly. However, what exactly makes this show look worse than that PS1 game that you showed footage of? What makes this show look worse than Reboot, Jimmy Neutron, and those CGI Bratz cartoons? I can see why you don't like this show's animation, considering how choppy the movements are, and that one piece of animation that you showed where Susan grows and holds the president and that alien in her hand looked very unfinished. However, I shouldn't have to explain what Mr. Enter didn't. It should be his own job to explain these things, and so that we can get a good idea on why he thinks this way about the show's animation. And trust me when I say this right now, for the majority of this video, all Mr. Enter spends most of his time on, in terms of his problems with the show, is its animation. Including 3 parts that I'm not showing in this video, where he says that the show is a book that is completely acceptable to judge by its cover, how it's ugly as sin, and that an episode of The Simpsons from 1995 looks better than this. And when he does go on to talk about the other things, they're not better by much, except for him mentioning that Nickelodeon's creators progressively get worse show after show, which I don't have anything to argue about because I see nothing wrong with that statement. But the other things that he talks about, well, remember when I said earlier that Mr. Enter, because he didn't watch the movie, that something was going to bite him in the butt really hard? Well, brace yourselves, people.
All of the characters are flanderized, everyone has got one character trait. And sometimes it's from the movie, sometimes it pretends the movie doesn't exist. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Susan want to not be a giant and wanted to live a normal life? In this one, she's absolutely super happy to be a giant. It's part of her identity and she gets sad when it's in jeopardy. I'm just very, very confused. It's like they made a Shrek cartoon, but it was about Shrek destroying villages and eating people.
Hey guys, do you remember when Mr. Enter said multiple times in this video that he didn't watch the movie, including in the parts that I skipped? Well, in this clip right here, that came right back to bite him in the butt. Mr. Enter, how do you know that the show flanderized its characters when you yourself said in the same video that you haven't seen the film? You said yourself that you only read the Wikipedia article, which only gives you a plot synopsis. I'm not saying that you had to watch the movie, however, Enter, you do realize the reason why Susan is fine with being a giant in the show, right? If you did watch the film, and especially its ending, you would have realized the reason why Susan is okay with being a giant. Because near the end of the movie, Susan feels as if she finally accomplished something by defeating that robot, and she realized that Derek was selfish. I don't entirely blame Enter for being confused because he doesn't know about that plot point in the movie, but saying that the characters are flanderized is a pretty bold claim coming from someone who didn't see the movie. After that, I didn't have anything else to say. Mr. Enter goes on to say that he's not going to watch the movie and just read the article when that bit you pretty hard, so that's a terrible idea. He goes off topic to say that the film used celebrities like Hugh Laurie. He says that Hugh should stop using the English accent. He recommends to avoid the show, how it has nothing of value, and says everything that I said that he would talk about in the ending. So, with that out of the way, it's time for me to go into final thoughts. Mr. Enter, if there's any word of advice that I would give you to do next time, it would be to watch the movie before watching the show when you're reviewing a cartoon show based on a movie that you haven't seen, because holy cow, this was a disaster. Listen, I'm not going to go ahead and say that the Monsters vs. Aliens TV show was good either, because of how boring and forgettable I thought it was, but I can easily go on and on and on about every single issue that I had with your video. When you didn't spend the entire video complaining that the show's animation is terrible and that earlier CGI cartoons shows looked better than this, you go on to be vague about how the movie and show's humor is bad, and you took the show's president way too seriously, as well as going off topic to say that you would have other problems with the movie if you would see it, and when you did go and have a point that did go into detail, it really does show how misinformed you are. I understand that a cartoon show should stand on its own separate from the movie, and you don't need to watch the film in order to watch the show, but if you're going to make statements like, this show flanderized its characters, yeah, then watching the film is probably a better option.
Because Angela was fantasizing about letting Nanette and her teacher die, she lets the water overflow and gets sent to the principal's office. And the substitute is apparently a substitute principal now. Okay, bullshit! Number 1, principals and teachers are different jobs. A substitute teacher may be qualified to take the place of a teacher because they can at least keep things orderly, even if they don't understand or like the subject being taught. A principal is a job that requires a lot more attention and isn't someone who can let someone else tide things over until the real principal gets back. But do you know who can? The vice principal! That's why schools have vice principals!
Okay, so the substitute teacher is now the principal. I fail to see how that's rage-worthy. And also, the school Angela attends is an elementary school, and elementary schools, especially those in small towns and the ones I've been to, do not have a vice principal. Instead, they rely on other staff members to fill in when the principal is out. So, in that sense, the show isn't completely inaccurate when excluding a vice principal character.
Nanette isn't an asshole enough to make Angela look like the good guy. The bully cliché is one of the easiest to write, and you fucked it up!
It's funny how you're judging how a character acts for the entire series based on one episode. Okay, so Nanette may not have acted as bitchy in this episode as other episodes in the show, but that doesn't mean that's her overall behavior. I mean, this is the same character that uses her wealthy status to gain superiority over her classmates, manipulates adults into thinking she's perfect while being abusive towards other students, cares nothing for her family, and much, much more. Yeah, if that's not a bitchy enough character for you, then I don't know what is.
Let me explain something I want to make very clear. I do not like getting requests. I do not take requests.
Oh no.
It goes on a simple logic. When 1 or 2 people tell me to review this specific thing, it tends to not be good or bad enough for a review. Please tell me he's not gonna do what I think he's gonna do. I know it seems weird that I'm trying to tell people not to send me requests by caving into a request, but I figured that would be a good way to show the other reasons that I don't really like to heed to requests. Brilliant. No, just absolutely brilliant. You know what, Mr. Enter? I get you. Yeah, I do. I totally understand where you're coming from. You don't want requests. You don't take requests. I get it. However, Mr. Enter, could you perhaps maybe not spin in the face of your fans? Seriously? No, seriously. Are you really this fucking dumb? I mean, wow. So what Mr. Enter is doing is saying he's not taking requests. And none does a request to show you how terribly wrong we go. And you know what? I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind one bit if not for the fact that this video was labeled as an animated atrocity. In an animated atrocity, you're supposed to tear into a specific episode of a show and explain what's wrong with it. It's supposed to be insightful and entertaining. However, here, it's not insightful or entertaining. And it's boring, and it's basically Mr. Enter implying that you wouldn't understand a normal video on why he doesn't take requests because you are too stupid. I'm Mr. Enter, and I have to pull off this pathetic propaganda in order for my fixed cult fans to understand. Obviously, I commented on why this review was terrible. In return, I got attacked by an idiotic, rabid, immature Enter bot. And he attacked me in other videos related to Enter too because he's a fucking stalker. So you know what, Mr. Enter? I do not blame you one bit thinking that your fans are idiots. Because most of them really are. Want to know why it's taking me so long to get back into reviewing MLP episodes? It's because every day I get more people asking when it's going to come up, and each time it gets me closer to just going Chainsaw Massacre on any random episode, and I don't want to do that. Not even to the bad episodes. It's not people's fault, it's— Yes, it is! You literally just said that! Holy fuck, somebody replay that for me.
It's because every day I get more people asking when it's going to come up. And each time it gets me closer to just going My god, do you even know what words mean? Do you even words? It's basically Mr. Enter saying that if it wasn't for the fans constantly telling him to do season 5 of his shit girl show, then he'd have those videos out sooner. Like, holy fuck. If you want to be shown why it's a bad thing for me to review something solely because I got a bunch of requests for it, watch my Girls Gone Mild review. While I stand by what I said in that review, the episode didn't give me anywhere near enough to talk about, but a bunch of people wanted me to review it, so I reviewed it. Oh, so he has put this stuff into example before. And yet here he is. Doing it again? Guys, do you remember that thing that Mr. Enter used to say all the time? I think it went a bit like, what I'm doing is wrong, I know it's wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyway. This just further proves my point on how he could have made a separate video off of this. He could explain why he doesn't take requests and use that review as an example. It at least wouldn't imply that Mr. Enter doesn't think of his fans as idiots. Look at that. Yep, just another example of how biased Mr. Enter really is. By the way, do you know how long it takes until Mr. Enter actually gets his show? Take a guess. 3 fucking minutes. That is insane. And when he actually does get to the show, he spends another fucking minute talking about the company who made the show. And you know what else? When he actually does start reviewing the show, it's nothing. A large portion of it is once again addressing his request policy. Once again, I wouldn't mind this if this wasn't labeled as an animated atrocity. Want proof on what I just said? Okay, you get the point there. Then we see the Rocket Monkeys destroying things, just like Fanboy and Chum Chum, and just like SpongeBob and Patrick in their bad episodes. Hell, just like the Breadwinners. These two are the heroes, by the way. You know, like I've explained in so many other reviews how the episode gets the bad guys and the good guys confused because they think it's funny in some fucked up sense of the word. If you're going to use Flash animation, you cannot get away with simple shapes. It looks cheap and lazy. Isn't that right, Pixel Pinky? Isn't that right, Johnny Test? Self-awareness that their comedy is horrible?
I know what'll make you feel better. SpongeBob!
Oh god, no! Wow, they're not even trying. And neither are you, Enter. Come on, there are a billion other jokes you could have put there. In fact, there's lots you can say about Rocket Monkeys that you haven't said about other shows. You could have said how the monkeys being annoying actually makes sense because, well, they're monkeys. But you could have also said how it doesn't really play up to that monkey scenario as much as it should have.
The situation has become critical. I am overwhelmed with negative emails.
Oh my god, that is the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone.
And a call back to the trolls video. Worst thing that could happen to anyone, huh? Thought that was cancer or something, not some hate mail that you can easily ignore.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this setup before. Oh yeah, the Fanboy and Gem Jam episode I reviewed specifically dealt with sickness.
Well, you could explain how it's different here than there, like how the banana stays sick unlike Fanboy and Chum Chum.
How did SpongeBob do this joke better in its first season, about 15 years before you did it in your first season?
Well, we're never gonna know, because he never explains it to us. Instead, he spends more time on more important stuff, like...
You see, I don't like to review something if I'm getting absolutely nothing new out of it.
That's a load of bullshit, Mr. Enter. You're getting a lot of new things out of this. You just choose not to make any new arguments for the show because you want to make a point, when in all actuality, it is possible for you to review the show. All you need to do is know that your video doesn't have to be 10 minutes long, throw more jokes in there, and pull all that request and tell tune bullshit off this review, and you've got yourself a decent review of Rocket Monkeys. You know what, guys? I want to show you something. This is Mr. Enter's journal entry on why he did this in the first place. Yes. We are going there. Let's begin, shall we? I had two choices when it came to Rocket Monkeys. One, I could avoid reviewing it entirely. Two, I could review it. Both were bad options. Both were very bad options. Wait, aren't those your options on all your reviews anyway? So you're saying it's always a bad option when it comes to reviewing things. Glad to know. Not reviewing Rocket Monkeys. Number one, let's start with the obvious. I would keep getting requests for it, and people keep wondering when I get to it. I could say that I wouldn't be taking requests, but if it wasn't done in an actual review, it wouldn't have had a strong enough effect. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Mr. Enter is implying that fans would be too stupid to understand on a regular video, so he has to pull this shit off in order for them to fully get it. No, Mr. Enter, we would have understood. In fact, if you made a separate video off it, it probably would have had a stronger effect than what you did, because it shows you trust your fans, and I wouldn't be making this commentary about how asinine you are right now. In fact, now I think about it, maybe we should keep sending Enter requests so we'll do this kind of shit again. That's how we'll get our reviews. Yeah! I've said many times that I don't want people giving me requests, especially here on DeviantArt. More like only here on DeviantArt. I've never heard you talk about it on YouTube. If it was either on MLP Review, which I don't watch those, or I just forgot about it. Also, you gotta remember that not everybody goes on DeviantArt, even if you told them to. Yes, I did ask for requests in my early reviews. That was back before I had 1,000 subscribers. Now I have 100 times as much, and it's too much trouble to keep that option open. Not really. You can simply look up what the specific show that person's requesting about and decide if it's really enough for a review on that forefront. Also, love how you're more humble since those many subscribers. Not to mention that there are a million other things I plan for myself. Yeah, Mr. Enter is not a multitasker. Reviewing Rocket Monkeys. Let me start with the obvious. I talked about literally every wrong with the episode that was given to me. I call bullshit. You only talk about the episode for like X minutes. Yep, and that would have been a whole review if I didn't talk about other stuff. Do you think anyone would care about how long a review is? They just want to see the fucking review. Also, another point I need to bring up here is that, Mr. Enter, you simply just ignore the requests and do what you want to do. Then again, you can't do that with fucking trolls, so why bother? Is the review any good? I don't know. I can tell you this. The review is as good as it could be. Good as it could be, my ass. There are a billion other ways you could have made this review better. And I just explained it a specific way a minute ago. At several points I was tempted to just use sound bites for my old reviews, which probably would have come across as a fuck you. No, that'd actually be kind of funny. Mr. Enter not understanding humor since 2013. Speaking of which, I mean other reviewers might make up new jokes when reviewing old material, but comedy is not my focus and never been my attention. Well, at least you put it on a side or something to fill up the episode to at least 4 minutes. You can still be serious. Do I like talking about random tangents in a review? No, I don't. But you sure have a habit of doing so. And that's another thing. The more you're afraid you'll disappoint people, the less you're likely to try. You knew this, and yet you did it anyway. Oh no, wait, you didn't try in this review. All you did was imply that you think your fans are stupid, not coming up with any new arguments in order to show a new one. Didn't realize that you could have made a separate video off request, and it probably would have had a stronger effect. You thought that was a good idea to complain about one of your policies in animated atrocity, when it's not, and overall, put another crowning achievement of your slowly but surely declining quality. You know, part of me thinks his fans are a bunch of idiots if he has to do this. I'm not an idiot, so allow me to do one thing before we go. Thanks for watching. If any fans of Enter are watching this, I hope you know that I actually did know what Mr. Enter was trying to do, and I hope you know that I thought it was a stupid decision. Having differing opinions does not mean not knowing of the subject matter.
It seems like just yesterday that I was reviewing Seahorse Seashell Party, and its terrible message that it was trying to spread. By far, the most common defense that I've gotten for that and this show is that Family Guy is a comedy, and everything it does should be taken as a joke. No, Family Guy does not get that excuse.
You can't objectively judge something as horrible just out of your personal feelings and no other reason. Another thing you can bring into the matter is that humor is subjective. Just because you think it's the worst thing ever, that doesn't mean other people will think that as well. There are plenty of people that find this episode to be good for what it is. I don't necessarily agree with them, but it's not in my power to decide their interests.
Search endlessly, fight till we're free.
I only have two options here. I can either take both episodes dead serious, or I could take them both as a joke. You can only be one type of show, and Family Guy is a comedy.
Just letting you know that this statement will fuck him over multiple times in this video.
Give Family Guy credit for trying? No. That's like giving a chef credit for getting out of a seat in a commercial airliner, grabbing the controls, and crashing the plane because he wanted to be an air hero.
That was very stupid of you to say. Dissimilar to a plane crash, the worst thing this episode did was offend people. And can you please provide proof of anyone telling you to give them credit for making this episode? If not, then shut up.
No one was asking Family Guy to do this. No one wanted Family Guy to do this. Everyone but the staff, apparently, knew that this was beyond Family Guy's range.
You know what's funny about what you just said? I can easily take that and use it against you. If you can't even review this episode calmly, you shouldn't have done it at all.
Considering I want to get to the point here, filler, Quagmire nearly kills himself with erotic self-asphyxiation, more filler, and then we learn that Quagmire's sister is coming with her boyfriend, who badly abuses her because they're okay with just bringing that up in a conversation on, real people.
Still with him? Isn't he the one that beats her?
Yeah, but she's gotten a lot better.
A lot better? At what? Taking punches? Oh wait, she's gotten better after the beatings her abusive boyfriend gave her. I get it now! That's horrible!
Did you really need to address that? It's almost common knowledge that when you bring up a tragic event in someone's life, especially something like an abusive relationship, you give an answer that will provide comfort to those who are worried. But with that said, I don't get your problem with her recovery from getting assaulted by her partner. If anything, it's good news.
We get shown Jeff yelling at Brenda, and they try to tell jokes, which aren't really funny because this isn't a funny subject matter.
You mean Family Guy, a comedy show, is trying to display comedy? Never would have thought of such an asinine concept.
Search endlessly, fight till we're free.
Let's start with the obvious. They display Brenda as being psychologically damaged, and they make it sort of clear that Jeff was the one who damaged her. Okay, what did she ever see in Jeff in the first place? Most adults don't just magically appear in domestic abuse situations, and it's never really explained why Brenda stays with Jeff at all.
You know, you don't have to stay with a man who treats you that way.
Oh, Jeff's sweet. You don't see how soft and gentle he hits me when we're alone.
Yes, she is constantly making an excuse for Jeff, but she never actually comes up with the real reason that she's staying there. These reasons could be, and he needs me to survive, I need him to survive, he's threatened to kill me if I say anything or try to leave.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to make a hypothesis. Most domestic abuse situations do not happen automatically, something you did bring up. But that's exactly the case. It could be possible that he wasn't always abusive and it's a tragic downfall he went through as time progressed.
Then you could see what I see in this episode. We learn nothing about Brenda, or Jeff for that matter, that doesn't directly relate to the abuse situation or a complete joke. But here's what really gets me. Because Family Guy loves to be over the top, Brenda doesn't seem blind to Jeff's abuse. She seems blind to reality. More or less, they portray her as an idiot, who just chooses to stay in this abusive relationship.
Earlier you said she was too psychologically damaged to be able to do anything, so she's probably being complacent to avoid getting beaten any more than she already is. You're acting like this is impossible and can never happen, when in reality, it happens way more than I'd like to admit.
Also, most abuse happens behind closed doors. And unfortunately, as much as I wish it were the case, not all abusers are idiots. They can be very smart psychopaths, and they have a knack for manipulating other people. What I'm saying is that no one casually beats their spouse in public. They wait until they get home, where no one else can see their behavior.
As someone from West Yorkshire, I've actually seen people abuse their partners on their front yard or on public sidewalks. Therefore, your point is debatable.
Also, I've already said this, so I won't go on too long about it. Being serious doesn't really work when every 5 minutes you pop up with something random shouting, "Ha ha, this is pointless!"
What is your problem with them trying to add some comic relief? I'm only gonna say this one more time. If you want them to be a comedy, don't get onto them when they add humor in their episodes. Otherwise you just look like a nitpicker. Then again, look who I'm dealing with.
No part of this issue is conveyed correctly.
Can't you just arrest the guy?
I can't arrest Jeff unless Brenda files a formal complaint with the police.
She won't go to the police. She's afraid of what Jeff will do.
Hey guys, you know what the definition of irony is? Well, here's the funny thing. What Joe just said is not true for exactly the scenario that they're conveying. If someone is getting their ass beaten in plain view of everyone, then yes, the police have the right and the duty to step in. I'd understand if the scenario was happening behind closed doors. Like most abusive scenarios, they might have a point, because in that situation, it actually is difficult, but not impossible.
For starters, Joe hasn't witnessed Brenda getting abused yet, so he cannot take action. Also, when Jeff is beating Brenda, he's doing it in the safety, dare I say that, of Glenn's house. And before you say that Glenn and Peter are witnesses, humans can lie very well. What I'm saying is that there is enough evidence against Jeff as there isn't.
By telling people that the law is useless in this scenario, you're telling people not to go to authorities and take the law into their own hands, because that is the only option here.
For some abuse victims, yes, they have no choice but to act on their own. Are you saying that they're wrong for doing that? If so, then you've just ignited a fuse in my heart, and you really don't want to do that with me. I'd also like to mention that I find it amazing how you're coming up with all these solutions to domestic abuse, yet when it comes to trolling and bullying, you act like it's game over.
Search endlessly, fight till we're free.
No, Brenda, you're not fine, okay? Please, I'd like to say something if I may. Brenda, the fact that you are being abused has affected my life in the following ways. The sister that I knew and loved growing up no longer exists. The person I see before me now is just a punching bag. And I call you person and not woman because a woman is a strong, beautiful, vibrant creature. A woman embraces life. A woman makes choices to make her life better. Sadly, the fact that you are with Jeff proves to me that you have made a choice to make your life worse. I want the girl I grew up with back. I want my sister back.
Okay, all bets are off. Where do I even begin? Let's start with you, Quagmire. How this has affected your life. You're a convicted sex offender, constantly treating women like objects. You are not one to talk. No one gives a goddamn shit what you think, or how this affects you.
How would you like it if you were told that? Mr. Enter, do you even think before you speak? And don't even think about telling me that he's angry because that's not an excuse to make retarded remarks.
The woman. Fuck off, Family Guy. Fuck off and die.
Real mature, Mr. Enter. Really fucking mature.
Search endlessly, fight till we're free.
Now here's one of the bigger missteps of the episode. When Jeff is gone, Brenda is in such a psychological state that she's just going to meet another Jeff. It happens in real life. People who have been in abusive relationships without some kind of counseling or therapy often end up in more abusive relationships. So what's the way to solve Brenda's problem according to Family Guy? Well, let's just straight up kill Jeff. After all, Brenda will instantly become that vague little girl Quagmire grew up with. And because the law is useless, the only way to solve the situation is to kill the abuser.
Let me tell you a story. About 3 years ago, my ex-boyfriend tried to rape me. I'm not entirely comfortable going into detail about it, but he was very vicious with me. I knew for a fact that I needed to act on my own, so I tased him into unconsciousness. Yes, not every abuse situation is the same, but every victim needs to understand that sometimes escaping an abusive pillock is a do-it-yourself predicament.
Not all abusers are psychopaths. Some of them have legitimately never been told right from wrong, and those people can change. You know, if you give them the fucking intervention.
This is my biggest problem with you, Enter. You always have to play by the rules. If I had played by the rules, I probably would have a 3-year-old child by now. People have to do what they have to do. If you want to talk about how badly portrayed the situation is, talk about how instead of Brenda getting her revenge, it's done for her.
Search endlessly, fight till we're free.
This episode is thoroughly disgusting in the worst way possible. In its pathetic attempt to win an Emmy, they've treated a very serious issue so poorly that I'm willing to bet that it's done more to hurt the cause of domestic abuse awareness than to help it. Misinformation is far, far worse than no information at all. This episode portrays abuse victims as idiots who choose to stay in relationships they have no control over. 60% of domestic violence takes place at the home, and it is the third leading cause of homelessness in the United States. Most people in abusive situations can either stay there, be killed, or be homeless.
I want to end the video with a little message to you all. If you're with someone who's a complete toe rag to you, get away from them. If they try to take you back, continue to avoid them. It's as simple as that. If you're being abused and fear for your life, contact the authorities. They can arrest the person who's abusing you. Don't publicize it or anything, just remain quiet and go to the nearest precinct if you can. If you're unable to report them, fight back. Get yourself a gun, knife, hammer, anything that hurts and use it on them. Here's another story. My friend Sabrina had a very abusive boyfriend. I refused to say anything more than that regarding the abuse. She knew that she needed to do something or else she would die. So she filed a restraining order against him and got herself a personal defender to protect her in public. She even purchased a gun too. After a few close calls with him, everything went back to the way it used to be, and he's since never returned. Same with me. My ex has not once tried to come after me since then. Me moving to New York has nothing to do with that. It was then I found out that there's always a way out. You just need to know when to go for it.
Well, I've met someone too. I've met a man who loves me for me. A man who's willing to cheat on his wife because he's a closeted homosexual who thinks I'm a man. A man who refers to my vagina as a manhole.
She is talking about Barney Rubble, and I'd like to give this movie a solemn fuck you right out of the gate. You know, the whole thing about the Flintstones being the first primetime animated show on television, and without it, The Simpsons wouldn't exist, Family Guy would not exist, and South Park wouldn't exist. Without any of those drawn together wouldn't exist. But if you want to call your grandfather gay, go right ahead.
What? How does making a joke about Barney from the Flintstones equal calling the show's grandfather gay? Seriously, you don't explain this.
What also bugs me about this review is that Mr. Enter tends to take a joke super seriously. Sure, without the Flintstones, Family Guy, The Simpsons, etc. wouldn't exist. But no need to assume the offense is a middle finger to the source material. It's portrayed as a joke for a reason. No need to go overboard. Sensitivity is strong these days.
Clara's dead. Clara? She's dead.
This scene is totally useless if you watch the whole movie. In fact, because this scene is here, it gets rid of almost all of the suspense within the movie. Because of the scene, we know who is going to live and who is going to die for the most part. And in a story where the characters are actually in danger, that is the last thing you want. To upcoming writers, prologues are useless. Almost 100% of the time, any kind of prologue is pointless. In fact, you are more likely to get a book published if you do not include a prologue.
Here's the thing. Prologues do serve their purpose in certain kinds of stories, like fantasy. It sets the ball rolling for the entire story, and also saves us, and the reader, an exposition dump later on. But yes, prologues are problematic to write. If only there was a way to make good prologues.
A blessing from the heavens! And now we're going to be skipping again, because he does make a decent point, and there's really not much else to cover in this part.
Everyone gets their own little intro before they hear the next competition. Waldor changes into a bunch of things because we can't go 5 minutes without a dick joke. And Waldor is probably the biggest example of at least this movie's laziness. The job was simple. Take a SpongeBob character and make it more adult. Pervert it a bit. You know, the character who frequently, innocuously abuses and destroys people and property, seems to have a creepy crush on Squidward, is guilty of kidnapping and home invasion, doesn't give a shit about the law, and has done many other creepy things. It should not be rocket science to make him an adult character without relying on fucking dick jokes!
Oh boy, those bad episodes have tainted your mind, hasn't it? First off, you said it yourself.
The job was simple. Take a SpongeBob character and make it more adult. Pervert it a bit.
So why are you getting on the movie's case for doing something that a perverted character would likely do? Remember, there are two definitions of adult. An adult that grew up and acts like a member of society, or someone who is an adult age but still retains the immaturity and nature of a child. SpongeBob and this character clearly inspired by SpongeBob have usually been the latter.
You know what doesn't help your argument? Completely misinterpreting SpongeBob's initial character. Yes, he did stupid things after the movie, but the character Waldor was based off the SpongeBob from the early seasons. After all, Season 1 of the original show came out in 2004. The episodes where SpongeBob became the thing you described came out around the time of Season 6. in 2008, a year after Season 3 of Drawn Together ended. So, unless they changed his character in the movie when compared to the show, then this analysis is Donald Trump levels of wrong. Yeah, I went there.
And finally, your anger in this review.
Oh, I get the satire they're trying to pull. The second we remove censorship rules, shows will immediately take advantage of those standards being removed and do nothing else with the material. Good God, how many times are you going to have this guy stutter? Also, you know the show SpongeBob? It does have a point. It's called being funny. Because no one wants to see any of the shit you've thrown in my fucking face.
This doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the continuity of your series.
Wait, what?
A show has never given me this much eye strain before. I can barely keep my eyes open. How can this be not the time to release my inner anger?
Because this is one of the worst things that you've ever seen.
I don't get you.
Any man can get angry when fighting a foe or a dragon, but the man who can stay calm in the face of even the greatest adversary is the one who most often wins. Sometimes the stronger blow isn't the one that wins, but the one that sees the weak point in the heat of the heaviest, fastest battle.
Now compare that to here. He's getting angry, he's making rash mistakes, he's let it consume him. Mr. Enter has forgotten something he himself wrote. He wrote that scene, and now he's forgetting it. There is a time and place for the anger, and this is not the place, especially when you see his arguments later on.
So yeah, we'll be skipping a bit, since Enter makes a few more decent points.
It's like he's taking one step forward, and then 2 steps back.
One fucking line! And this joke may have made sense. I don't know if it's just my sex repulsion, but this is putting me further into nausea. I don't know. Any of you people in the audience, is this doing anything for you?
Sex repulsion, really?
Also, gotta love that slip up in the audio.
Oh, I'll touch on that later, dude.
But yes, I get it. You're repulsed by Captain Hero's fetish, but your negativity at this point is too much. Yes, the movie is bad. Definitely bad. But it's moments like this that make me cringe because of how pissy you get over one character. Regardless of Captain Hero's fault as a character, there's no need to go insane with your anger.
Foxy finds the Drawn Together control room and realizes that everything is offline. She comes to the conclusion that their show has been cancelled. Alright, my suspension of disbelief is totally shattered. I cannot believe anything that's going on here. A SpongeBob character that knows the meaning of the word cancelled. In what universe? In what fucking universe? So, Foxy just begins swearing.
Now?
Not yet. Anyways, what was the point of that statement? You basically just said, a SpongeBob character knows the meaning of the word cancelled. What point does that have to the review? It's not a joke, you just said a thing. I wouldn't mind it so much if this review wasn't 40 goddamn minutes long. Seriously, Enter? That long? Yeah, it's a movie and not a show, but if you're gonna have padding like this, you could cut this shit out.
Skip?
Skip.
We got some flashbacks that involve a lot of nudity that I'm not showing you, where the cast realizes that they're not the child-friendly versions of the characters they appear to be as. One of those flashback sequences involved Molly with a lot of naked superheroes having sex. Is necrophilia like a really popular fetish? Is it something that allosexual people find funny? Is it something I'm not supposed to find disgusting and abhorrent? Because I find it disgusting and abhorrent.
Stop. What the hell is this crap? Okay, your subtitles have been distracting before, but this is ridiculous. It takes up almost the entire screen. And for what? Bringing up obvious information about the human body that most people likely know about already.
Also, gotta love how he's trying to apply real-world logic into a comedy as well as an animated show.
What?
Yup, he just did that.
2 hours later.
Well, that happened. Good thing that I minimized the damage.
How did you do that?
Raisins!
Whatever. I see our avatars got changed too.
Yep, let's just finish this.
Yeah, we need to get our show back. Otherwise, I'll have to go back to my old gig exposing myself to children.
Oh my god, that joke actually worked. It's a referential joke that actually works, considering that SpongeBob himself has spent entire episodes naked. Although, that makes an earlier joke even worse.
How? Oh, right. This subtitle crap. What kind of crap is this? So because of a few bad jokes, it ruins the only good one? No! That's usually not how this works.
Let's say George Carlin went on stage, you know, if he wasn't dead, and told a bunch of really bad jokes. Then he makes a good one about, say, Tumblr. By your logic, that Tumblr joke is ruined because of the other bad jokes of the show. If a joke works, a joke works, even if the other jokes told by this guy aren't good.
Skipping again, though this time it's because the points he brings up aren't worth responding to.
Clara runs at the guards and gets killed. As soon as the rest of them escape, they are all found by the robots. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang is looking for them. But they are all very tired. Look, audience, no animation. That is until the carriage conveniently finds them and most of the group is reunited.
Now.
This audio editing is atrocious. If it is not your slip-ups that you left in, it's shit like this that makes your review very unprofessional. Seriously, did you even look at this shit before posting?
But Dave, he needed the money. So
Matt married into money.
Who the hell would ever want to listen to this?
It used to be money.
I seriously hope that this is a joke and they're not flat out admitting that they made a lazy piece of shit just to get paid. Also, in the background, no animation. Like, none at all. For the longest period I've legitimately seen in any cartoon ever. Longer than any Family Guy episode, I swear.
No animation, huh? So I take it the flowing water and rising water level doesn't count then?
Hey Wave, remember your question a minute ago?
Yeah.
I think he just answered that for you.
I cannot believe what we're watching today. This is something that's long been overdue. Seth MacFarlane's cavalcade of cartoon comedy is anything but. It's more like a cavalcade of crap. I don't think it's any secret that I'm not the biggest fan of Seth MacFarlane's brand of humor, if the number of Family Guy episodes that I reviewed didn't give you that hint.
So this is the beginning of the issue with this video. It's okay to not be a fan of Seth MacFarlane's brand of comedy. Hell, lesser and lesser people are every year. But with not liking someone's brand of humor, you still have to keep your cool and attempt to be reasonable with your claims. If you can explain why a joke doesn't work in your eyes, then that shows a sign of a good review. Otherwise, you're just sitting there bitching that you don't enjoy someone's humor.
But today, we have something special. You see, when it comes to Family Guy, he and his crew have to answer to things like network executives and ratings and censors. But Seth MacFarlane's Cavalcade of Cartoon Comedy is a web series where you do not have to do anything of that. In fact, several of these shorts didn't even follow the YouTube terms of service. Normally, I don't tackle web animations on animated atrocities. I don't think it's very fair to criticize people in this style for things that they created out of passion that they most likely made for themselves, probably without even a budget. This, however, isn't your typical web series. It had 3 major sponsors in its 2-year lifespan: Burger King, Nike, and Priceline.com. Made by the head of Family Guy, one of the most popular shows on television at the time. And if you wish, you can buy this on DVD or Blu-ray. Even one of those attributes would make this fair game for review, because there is no excuse for this to be as bad as it is. All you have here is a compilation of short skits of animation, anywhere from 5 seconds to 3 minutes. And you'll see that the animation style is very reminiscent of Family Guy. Like, exactly the same as Family Guy. This is because, and there's no way to convince me that this isn't the truth, this is a series of cutaway gags that were too stupid, offensive, lazy, or disgusting for Family Guy itself.
Or, and this is just a shot in the dark, it's because it's by Seth MacFarlane, a guy who's very similar to Matt Groening in that when it's his style, you'll know immediately. Even playing devil's advocate that this could very well be scrapped skits. This could very well be American Dad. Why do you just assume it's Family Guy? Is it because that's all Seth MacFarlane is known for? Well, American Dad came out in 2005. Cavalcade of Cartoon Comedy came out in 2008. It's not unreasonable for us to assume that this could very well be unused jokes from American Dad. I can only come to the conclusion that you think these are scrapped Family Guy skits because you've only ever seen Family Guy and you know that's one show that you despise. Not liking the humor of it, whenever you see other humor that you think is abhorrent, you'll immediately connect it to Family Guy. Sure, this is nothing but tinfoil hat assumptions, but if you want to throw yours into the ring, I'll happily oblige. I mean, it's incorrect either way you slice it, as it's just a bunch of skits Seth wanted to make, and if this is how you wish to start this review, then I think we're in for a good time.
Let me repeat that. This is the stuff that was not good enough to become Family Guy cutaway gags.
Alright, John, if you want to believe that, go ahead. This will just make this review all the more fucked. So viewers, as we go through this review of these shorts, yes, he's going to go through all of them. Remember the phrase, "These were not good enough to be in Family Guy." I will personally not be using this phrase, but if you truly wanted to bring up this argument that these are just that, then a problem even using this logic gets brought up, which means this is only going to get better.
There are around 50 different shorts. I'm going to be reviewing every single one of them. Cheers! I'd usually put a disclaimer myself on videos like this that can get kind of disturbing, but the video itself has one. Hey, I put landmines everywhere, but it's okay because I'm telling you that I put landmines everywhere.
So you'd rather they not put a fucking viewer discretion is advised stamp at the beginning of this video? I mean, you just said it yourself that you would normally do this, so why is them doing this a place of complaint? Honestly, Enter, there's a lot of things you are in your reviews, but inconsistent is not normally one of them. Why did this have to be one of those exceptions?
By the way, bloodshed is one word.
Yeah, and you only need one thing of text on your screen that doesn't overlap. I can nitpick too. What's your point?
There's also other forms of bodily waste that you did not tell the audience about, and sexual themes tend to be a separate content rating from the full nudity that is to follow. I'm stalling. Let's get into the good stuff.
Before we do, I do have some more things to touch on within that 10 seconds of bitching. First off, sexual themes and gore cover their bases. Sure, there is farting and dicks shoved onto the screen, but as far as farting goes, who the fuck cares? And dicks are kind of implied under sexual themes. Sure, they could also put ideologically sensitive material on the disclaimer, but at that point, having Seth MacFarlane's name in the title kind of implies that on its own. My point is this disclaimer is fine, and you're complaining about it while pouring salt in your raisins.
Let me sum up this short. Ha ha ha! The Scottish accent is funny. Listen to how funny this accent is that isn't yours. Isn't it hilarious that this guy is talking about a movie in the privacy of his own home? Can we please have a joke that isn't, I don't know, completely fucking boring?
That's only half the joke. The other half is he's complaining about the movie Tootsie, which is about a cross-dressing actor. I can agree with you that I don't find it funny, but I can at least acknowledge the fact that there's more than a joke than meets the eye. Now, viewers, you might be seeing where this commentary is heading, and yes, this will be very par for the course. Mr. Enter just assumes that there's no joke when there clearly is, and we'll be playing Explain the Joke throughout this commentary.
No, wait, can we please have a concept that's more than 3 words? Scottish person talks isn't funny.
Dude, the premise is right there for us to read. A Scotsman who can't watch a movie without shouting at a screen, which again is part of the joke. Seth tries making it relatable because we all know that one person who watched a movie and screamed, "Don't open the door, don't open the door," when we know she's going to do it. It's supposed to be hashtag relatable.
Oh, we are on a roll already. Hey, you know what else is funny? The bubonic plague. You know, killed like 2/3 of the Earth's population at one point. That was hilarious.
Implying dark topics cannot be funny again, Enter? Well, then you're gonna love what comes next. What makes an ISIS joke funny? The execution. What's the difference between a black person and cancer? Well, cancer got jobs.
I got what?
So Stephen Hawking walks into a bar. Just kidding. Gee guys, Asians drive so badly I'm beginning to think Pearl Harbor was an accident. What is white on top and black underneath? Society. How do you know your girlfriend is too young for you? You have to make airplane noises to stick the dick in her mouth. And finally, the term every 60 seconds in Africa is really stupid. Everyone knows Africans don't get seconds. They're lucky if they get 1 serving. Thank you, thank you. No need to crucify me. I'll be happy to hang myself.
The funniest season of Life on Earth, I can tell you that. This joke starts out so fucking slowly because it's so funny on its own.
Hello. Hi. What's that you're reading? I'm just reading this LA Times piece on campaign reform. Oh, where are you flying to?
Hey, I'm about to blow your mind. Drop a fucking truth bomb on you. Accents are not jokes. He talks different than me. I am rolling on the floor right now.
Ever get the idea that maybe it's just a voice? Gee, Enter, not every accent is trying to be the winner in the best joke pageant, and hell, you're the one who complained about the voice acting in just the first segment. Now that there's other voices, they're unfunny jokes? God damn it, Enter, quit jumping the gun. It's not gonna shoot a nigger unless you pull the trigger.
So, this short starts with a mountain climber on a cliff taking a shit.
Uh-oh, I gotta poop.
It's the first time we get to see shit in the series, but certainly not the last. And it falls on a wedding.
We are gathered here today to ask the blessing of the Lord our God for this union of Mark and Stephanie.
You know, this would have been a lot funnier if we actually didn't see the mountain climber, and the shit inexplicably fell from the sky, like it actually was from God.
So the joke would only be good if there was no setup? Gee, Enter, it's almost as if jokes tend to have setups so the punchlines have a bit more fucking context to them. You're not just gonna shout, "To get to the other side," without the setup of, "Why did the Mexican cross the border?" Okay, I think I can tone it down now. I've covered my bases on the bad joke criteria. My point is, Enter, I get that you have subjective standard to what you find funny. Hell, all humans do. But the problem with what you're bringing to the table is that you think this particular kind of joke would be funnier without the setup, which is retarded given the kind of joke this is.
Considering that's apparently the joke here. Especially because the preacher was looking up towards the mountain. Any possible comedy is killed by the banter at the end going on far longer than it should have.
The joke is bad because it's a joke now? I mean, the banter at the end is supposed to undermine the expectation given to the audience. It sets itself up to be this huge overreaction. God took a shit on our wedding, it wasn't meant to be. But it's just, alright, pretty clear cut, whatever. And as for the pastor looking up, you're reading too deep into it. He could have been looking more often in the distance. If we want to apply logic here, the rock climber is directly over them. The pastor never moved his head to look directly up, so therefore he was looking more at the sky. But that's if we were to use real-world logic for a skit.
This is a minute of a horse getting offended. Once again, this is a joke that could have worked if it didn't go on rambling for so long. It just goes on and on about nothing, and I keep wanting BoJack Horseman to appear in the corner and beat the shit out of everyone. Is that normal?
Alright, me too.
Look, I'm Mike, and this is Harry.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Get it? 'Cause I don't.
Hey, Enter, it's called a low-hanging fruit. The Sarah Jessica Parker is a horse joke was a viral joke that was really popular in 2008, the same year this series of shorts came out. But you know what? Let's keep explaining the joke. Back in 1994, Sarah played a character called Dolores Fuller in a movie called Ed Wood. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know the full context, but what I do know, during the movie, Sarah says,
"Do I really have a face like a horse?"
And thus, the meme was born from some guy who went by Wilbur making a single topic blog called Sarah Jessica Parker Looks Like a Horse. That's the context of the joke that you don't get and imply isn't there. And while I'm here, allow me to actually address that wonderful implication. Just because you don't understand a joke, that doesn't mean the joke isn't there. It just simply means you don't get it. Try again.
Wile E. Coyote, with the voice of Brian Griffin, kills the Roadrunner. I'm sorry, but I have this twinge, almost knee-jerk thing, where whenever I hear Brian Griffin's voice, I go into a murderous rage and have to kill the thing closest to me. Does anyone else have this problem? So Wile E. Coyote gets a job at a restaurant, which he botches, and then he tries to commit suicide, and then he becomes religious. I really don't get the joke.
And as everyone knows, if you don't understand a joke, it must mean that it doesn't at all exist, right? Alright, the joke is Wile E. Coyote had been chasing the Roadrunner down for 59 years. That's all he's done, you know, during this time. So realistically speaking, he wouldn't be qualified to do anything else, and in the mind of Seth, I guess, when people have no other purpose in life, they turn to Jesus. Basically, the idea behind the skit here is that Wiley needs Roadrunner.
Like, I don't see where the joke even is. People becoming religious isn't a joke. He felt that he didn't have purpose in his life, so he tried to commit suicide, then he became religious. Is this some clever observation that Wile E. Coyote doesn't have a point without the Roadrunner? Because anyone else who watches the show knows that. It's not some world-changing revelation.
Yeah, but just because it's obvious, that doesn't mean you can't still make observational comedy about it. Do jokers require to be original? Because I can tell you, if that's what you think, then you must be a real fun person to talk about the internet with.
You know, sometimes the first idea that comes to your head is not the one that you want to go with. What the hell is the joke? Just because the sentence sounds funny for the first 2 seconds doesn't mean you can make it a full short.
I can't believe I have to continue explaining the jokes here. On the one hand, this was 2008 and marijuana was illegal, so this was considered a bad idea. So this set up to subvert your expectations. When he goes on a small tirade about writing your thoughts down, which tends to be a good idea. Now, I particularly stopped here because of something you mentioned in your previous segment I skipped called the gay night.
It might be able to work if someone wanted to spend a few minutes creating a sense of misdirection. You know, have a heterosexual night act stereotypically gay, and switch it at the end.
Jeez, doing just that.
This is one of the better ones, even though it has a couple of notable problems. The main one being that it's a part of Seth MacFarlane's Cavalcade of cartoon comedy, which is on a mission to kill the concept of comedy.
So it's bad because it's the series? Fuck it, Enter. This has to be the best critique you've ever given anything ever. Now excuse me while I take sandpaper to my brain and attempt to forget that absolute retardation that is this logic.
So after Mario saves the princess, she refuses to give him a kiss.
Ooh, you leaped a bunch of mushrooms. I'm so impressed.
Hey, yeah, I played the game, that was in it.
I did not just leave a bunch of mushrooms. There were also these turtle shell things I had to jump over, and that was really hard.
Yeah, I remember that part of the game too. Anyone else in the mood for Dorkly? You know, Dorkly, it's a web series of pixel animations, where they make video game parodies, kinda like this. Except they actually put effort into it, and they actually critique the flaws or tropes of a game.
Oh yeah, Dorkly, the thing that came out technically in 07, but earliest stuff is from 2010, which was after the Cavalcade of cartoon comedy. Which basically makes this feel like a complaint about something because something in the future did it better. And even if you want to make the point that College Humor, which created Dorkly, has been doing this forever, so that doesn't change anything. Jerry Seinfeld can be the first to make a joke about airline food. That doesn't mean a Malaysian shark can't also ask what the deal with airline food is. The point is, people still have the ability to retell a joke within their own style, their own ways. Just because The Simpsons did it, that doesn't mean another show can't do it too. And I specifically use this phrase as it's actually going to be important later.
This is a person that the writer doesn't like. We're just gonna put them on screen for a while, and hope that the audience doesn't like them either. That's how celebrity satire works, right?
There's more than one factor you should be looking at, Enter. It's not just putting Matthew McConaughey on the screen for 2 minutes. You gotta pay attention to what Matthew is saying and doing. Being in this case, he's just rattling on in a monotone voice like a stoner would, very akin to his role in Dazed and Confused. The other person in the raft just lets him talk as he gets dripping crazy and eats McConaughey's leg, of which he pays no mind to, and then gets stabbed, which he doesn't scream at, which is a jab, if you will, at McConaughey's acting at the time. The joke is not McConaughey itself, but more his actions and tone.
Do you think the title is funny? No? Then this will be a waste of your life. I'm going to keep saying this a lot because that's what most of these shorts are. They're not jokes, they're titles.
So because you personally don't find it funny, that means they're not jokes in the slightest? You know, Inter, this is the mindset that made me want to hit this video like a cop hits a black man. The joke here is the stereotypes of Persian people and white women. This is something I would expect you to complain about, but instead you just say that there's no joke at all, missing something I could have possibly given a pass to, given who I'm talking to.
Of the shorts, this is probably the best.
But this is Seth MacFarlane's Cavalcade of cartoon comedy, so therefore it's automatically bad, right?
Because adult comedy begins and ends with sex, they think they can get the most mileage out of sex with random whatevers. Starting with...
Was it good for you?
Yes?
Good.
Oh, so they do find domestic abuse funny.
I was walking down the street one evening and I saw a black man running, holding a television. I thought to myself, I wonder if that's mine, so I hurried home and lo and behold, it was still there, shining my shoes. I will do this every time you imply that we can't joke about serious issues.
Hey, remember when I said that the animal penis short was the worst? I was wrong. Why the fuck are all the worst shorts exclusive to the DVD? What the hell kind of marketing sense does that make?
You did explain to us earlier that these things were sponsored by Priceline, Nike, and Burger King, right? I mean, I'm not a big fan of trying to stay advertiser-friendly myself, but Jesus, I understand the issues with some of these skits being connected to these kind of companies. Common logic, Inter. Don't be a Nimrod.
So, what happens in this one? Quentin Tarantino comes in and starts hacking at an infant with a fucking katana, while blood is squirting and an infant is crying. What is the point here? Quentin Tarantino makes violent movies, so let's have him be violent with an infant. That's absolutely hilarious. Is it funny because he's stabbing and cutting at the dick of an infant? Honestly, everything about this makes me sick to my stomach and I can't even watch.
And besides that, we have a better animated online short about Quentin Tarantino.
Okay, now I can certainly call you out on stating something as bad because something in the future is better, because no beating around the bush, Little Quentin came out 4 years after Seth MacFarlane's Cavalcade of cartoon comedy. This is like saying, oh, the Virtual Boy wasn't a giant leap in technology because the Oculus Rift came out 21 years later, despite the fact that the Virtual Boy was one of the earliest attempts at virtual reality, so we would have no chance of being perfect.
Can you get me back to Kansas?
No, that's going to be a tall order, but what I can do is make Oz more like Kansas. I've abolished all scientific research of any kind, instituted mandatory Bible study and church service attendance 7 days a week, forbidden the teaching of evolution in public schools, and here's a baseball bat for you to beat this gay guy. Hi there! Well, go on, get to it. I'm not going to beat myself.
Hey, did you hear? Seth MacFarlane doesn't like conservatives. I wanted to point that out because I didn't think the short made it clear enough.
Given what the rest of this skit had to offer, the joke is a lot more The Wizard of Oz is fucked up. Yes, you address this by explaining the story behind the Tin Man, but can things that are true not also open up for jokes? Can observational humor not exist either? What's with all these arbitrary standards to what is and is not okay in humor? This is really getting on my nerves.
Oh god, please don't.
Dad, today at school, my teacher said we evolved from other animals. That's not true, is it?
Of course not, Stephen. We were created by Monkey God in his monkey image.
Did you hear? Seth MacFarlane hates the strawmans of religious and conservative people. I don't even get the joke here. If people were monkeys, then their god would be a monkey. What is the joke?
Didn't you just get through talking to us about how Seth MacFarlane hates conservatives? Religious talks aren't exactly big parts of conservatism, but a whole heck of a lot of them believe in Christianity to an extent that monkey and father and son do. And if you don't want to go with that thought, let's go a different route. Throughout the skit, they go down a list of stereotypes of monkeys, you know, throwing poop, eating bananas, ripping off people's arms, you know, things people bring up when they joke about monkeys. So in other words, the joke could also be, monkeys! Hey! And no, this time I don't mean black people.
And you know, I didn't want to say anything, but Simpsons did it.
And here it is. Simpsons has done everything, though, even in some cases predicted the future. Hell, the fucking episode of South Park that sparked the whole Simpsons did it argument addresses how retarded this argument actually is.
So? Yeah, so? If the Simpsons did everything, right? Who cares? Yeah, they've been on the air for like 13 years, of course they've done everything.
Every idea's been done by us, even before The Simpsons.
Yeah, in fact, that episode was a ripoff of a Twilight Zone episode.
Really? So I shouldn't care if I come up with an idea. The Simpsons already did it. It doesn't matter.
Never use this argument again.
Anyone else want to watch the Angry Beavers instead?
Can you believe this guy? What?
A vagina! Yeah, a vagina. From now on, beaver means vagina.
Yeah! And that is the origin of the term.
I've never heard an asshole, beaver or otherwise, be referred to as a vagina. They've been referred to as a douchebag or a dick. Wait, you got the genitals reversed.
When your comedy begins and ends with her the sex, how the hell do you do that?
Look, guys, it's heading for the towers. What? No, it's not a plane, it's the joke flying over Enter's head. The joke is supposed to be that beavers are another word for pussy. Sure, it would have been better if they showed the beaver being a pussy, but when you're angry at someone, you'd be willing to call them anything. Again, I won't say the joke is funny, but the joke isn't sex-based. Actually, as far as it goes, Didn't you say nudity and sexual content were two different factors?
Once again, I don't really know what the joke is.
The Pilgrims tried using anal beads instead of real beads to get permission from the natives to settle in Manhattan. The joke is stereotypes.
So, let me get this straight. Your defense is that you shot the sheriff, but you did not shoot the deputy. Jaw.
Did you even listen to the song, or did you just watch that joke on The Simpsons? In the actual song, Bob Marley says that he shot in self-defense. I'm just saying, this makes me think that you haven't even listened to the song you're trying to make fun of, beyond the first couple of lines. But that would just be tacky.
The joke is Bob Marley does confess to shooting a sheriff. Sure, in the song he says, but I swear it was in self-defense, but that doesn't matter because, and they say it is a capital offense. Even in the song you're getting on Seth MacFarlane for and apparently not listening to, Bob Marley says, they're trying to track me down. They say they want to bring me in guilty, meaning they see him as a guilty man. The skit is a lot more accurate to the song than you give it credit for.
Oh shit, look at that one. They must have spent like $5,000 on all those decorations. Hey Vishnu, what? Where are all the decorations for your birthday?
Isn't Christianity like the most popular religion in the United States, and Hinduism is one of the least popular mainstream religions? For observational comedy, you're not very observant.
Observational comedy is a form of humor based on the commonplace aspects of everyday life. It is one of the main types of humor in stand-up comedy. In an observational comedy act, the comedian makes an observation about something from backwaters of life, an everyday phenomenon that is rarely noticed or discussed. If they're observing something that's true and making a joke on it, it's still observational comedy, you twit. If you wanted to get on their case, you could have bring up the fact that Vishnu's birthday doesn't fall on Christmas, but instead is recognized as in July, basically making their observational humor incorrect, but all you do is bitch about them pointing out the obvious to people who don't think about it.
I don't get the reference. If the audience doesn't get the reference, then the joke should be invisible.
Alright, so you finally just outright and said it. There is no joke if I don't get it. In-jokes exist. Referential humor exists. Sure, these are things not everyone would understand, but the targeted audience for the joke is for those who do get it. That's the purpose of in-jokes. Just add this to the tally of other types of humor that Mr. Enter deems unworthy of existing.
Oh dear. Will it blend? Tries will it die? So the joke is, they're about to do a bunch of bad things to an innocent dog. Way to go out on a bang. Like, it holds on a while because they know you're cringing, that you're hesitating, until it explodes. By the way, Joe Cartoon beat you to the joke of animals dying horribly in kitchen utensils. If you're gonna be shocking, you have to be original.
Not really, you just have to bring something shocking to a new audience. That way it's shocking to them. Going back to the majority of complaints you have had in this video, this just seems like arbitrary rules for the standard of comedy genres. Seriously, what are you, Borg Productions? Oh, right, you won't know who that is, therefore that reference shouldn't have been made.
Growing Around is a project that's very dear to my heart.
Okay, so far so good. A lot of us have projects like that.
Currently, I have finished the first draft of the novel, which is about 65,000 words.
It might be nice to explain the project a bit more before you tell us the word count. Anyway, he rambles for a long time about his writing history, and I'm gonna skip that.
But what is Growing Around?
In my humble little opinion, a disaster. And yes, in case you were wondering, I have read the book in question.
It started as wanting to be a webtoon or a pilot, some kind of animated series.
I love how you don't mention that you initially thought you could actually sell it to a TV network. Why, it's almost like you didn't want to be accused of having delusions of grandeur.
But through a series of events, the team that I gathered decided that the work might be better suited to a book series as a start. Now, the voice actors are still going to do their part during an audio reading. One of our artists is still doing all the art for it, like the cover. But more specifically, the general premise of the series was that the stories took place in a world where kids were still kids and adults were still adults, but the roles were swapped. It was to be a world designed and controlled by kids.
I also love how you don't mention the fact that you stole the idea from a Disney short called Flip Flopped, which you even made an Atrocity review of.
I don't think that this idea is particularly unique or anything like that.
Especially considering the fact that you stole it. Granted, Flip Flopped was a pretty bland short, but God, at least acknowledge where you got the idea from.
I'm sure that many people at least had this idea a few times growing up, but still the concept gives a lot of people pause.
That's because if you think about it for more than a few minutes, you realize that a world run by kids would quickly dissolve into chaos.
So, let's go really in-depth about it. The first thing that you have to know about the world of Growing Around is, within the work, the world works. By that I mean, it's not a dystopia or post-apocalypse. The world functions within the story.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with that. For one thing, the kids in your world are inexplicably skilled enough to have jobs despite having never gone to school, And for another thing, once they grow up, they lose their freedom to their offspring. Yeah, let me say that again. People lose their freedom once they grow up.
Pretty much wherever this idea is told, everything is terrible and dark and dystopic in the work. I think it's Lord of the Flies that largely influences how people think of this genre, and we have everything from Children of the Corn to The Tribe that builds upon this. In fiction, worlds ruled by children are a terrible place.
First off, an idea is not a genre. Second, fiction tends to portray worlds run by kids like this because kids are generally immature. And third, a world where you lose your freedom for no good reason as soon as you grow up is a terrible place, no matter how much you try to sugarcoat it.
They're cold and tough and dark, even though fiction is about the fantastical and stuff that couldn't possibly exist in reality.
Yes, but that's not an excuse to throw out all logic.
Growing around can be cold and dark and tough at times, but at its default, it's not. One thing that makes all the difference, and I think needs to be understood, is that this is a series that is written for children. I don't mean that in a condescending, it's so stupid, haha, they won't notice Teen Titans Go kind of way.
No, you mean that in a, I don't need to explain anything and I can throw away all logic kind of way.
I mean that this series was always designed to specifically appeal to the mind of a child. You could not tell this story in a book for adults, for instance.
Because most adults would quickly notice the gigantic holes and unfortunate implications in your world.
At least, not without making it the horrific dystopias mentioned above.
So you admit that adults will point out that your world makes no sense?
So let's ask, what makes a good story aimed at children?
Not something where people become slaves to their kids as soon as they grow up, I can tell you that.
To answer that, you're going to need to think about what issues do kids generally go through.
I've actually spent a lot of time with kids through babysitting and substitute teaching, and I really don't think that your book is something that's going to really appeal to them. For one thing, the characters are really bland and stereotypical. They feel like they were written by someone whose idea of what kids are like came from watching Nickelodeon. Like, all kids want to eat nothing but sugar, all kids love getting dirty. But I'm getting off topic. On with the video.
I don't mean the straightforward issues like school or chores or friendship. I'm talking about abstract and complex issues to how all of those things relate.
So now you're a child psychologist?
And when you get down to it, I don't think that any child goes through their childhood without feeling powerless or underestimated. And many children's works meet those specific needs.
And they do so without making adults in their stories slaves.
How many children's works have a monster where the adults can't do anything against it, either out of stupidity or thinking that it's just a childish game, or a lack of innocence, or even their own adult lives? Every book where the kids go to a magical school or get a superpower, it answers the feeling of powerlessness. In works where kids are able to outsmart villains much older than them, it answers the feelings of being underestimated. To put it basically, every work of children's literature needs to give kids a strong sense of agency. More often than not, that's what makes or breaks it.
Other things can make or break it too, such as actually telling a good story or having interesting characters, or, making sense.
Going Around attempts to meet both of those feelings. The feeling of powerlessness is an obvious one. Growing Around meets that on its face. In the world of Growing Around, kids have the power over their families, their countries, and their communities,
while the adults have no rights. Joy.
But feeling of being underestimated is a more interesting one, and it's another one that the world of Growing Around is also supposed to meet on arrival.
I'm really starting to feel like you think too highly of your own work, especially given that if you hadn't written it, you would probably pick apart the logic left and right.
The kid civilization within the book is able to keep up and at some points surpass the real-world alternative.
Oh, so now your world is better than the real world. Wow.
This is one of the reasons that I've always been hesitant to give some kind of explanation to why this world is working the way it is.
You don't want to explain it because it's better than the real world? Am I hearing you correctly? Pardon me if I don't particularly want to live in a place where I'd lose my freedom as soon as I turned 18.
Beyond general hints within the series. And there are actually many reasons for that.
As a side note, while he was writing the book, he did at one point stick in a prologue where the world was the result of a kid's birthday wish, which actually could have been the start of a book much more interesting than this one. But anyway, I'm guessing that he decided to take the prologue out since he doesn't mention it here.
A sense of wonder and intrigue is very important to children's books and children's media. In Growing Around's peer groups, books and movies and games and television shows aimed at a similar audience. We have works like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Sideways Stories from Wayside School. Actually, I think that Charlie is a pretty good way to put this.
Oh boy, here we go. By the way, I love how you put in that little note bitching about your critics. Real mature.
Explaining the magic is the difference between the original movie and the remake. The more modern version is more explained, more sterile, and less magical.
Wow, I love how you just assume that everyone must think the Tim Burton version is inferior. And second, the Tim Burton version doesn't explain the magic, as you put it. Yes, it gives Willy Wonka a backstory and explains where the Oompa Loompas come from, but the magic itself is still unexplained.
By explaining everything about why Willy Wonka is the way he is, it loses some of the charm.
Again, I love how you don't even entertain the possibility that some people could prefer the Burton version. I happen to like that we get to know Willy Wonka better in the new one. It makes him more of a sympathetic character, and yes, it feels more magical. And while we're on the subject, in both versions, as well as the book, the characters still behave in a believable manner. Veruca Salt is a brat because her parents spoil her. Augustus Gloop is a glutton because he's allowed to have as much sugar as he wants. Both of them are examples of what happens when kids are never taught self-control. Granted, it's exaggerated, but it's still believable.
Explaining the magic, and keep in mind, I'm using magic in a very loose sense here. It could also refer to something like faster than light travel, whatever is the book's special thing. It's always a dicey proposition.
First, it's really pretentious to put your own work in the same category as these beloved stories. And second, one of these things is not like the others. In these other stories, the unreal elements are natural phenomena in their universes, or in the case of sci-fi elements, they're the result of advanced science. In your work, however, the unreal elements are the direct result of the adults behaving illogically, giving up their authority to their kids for no good reason.
Let me put it as simply as possible. I never wanted kids to rule the world of growing around because of midichlorians.
And now you're basing your argument on a misconception. The Star Wars geek's gonna say this once, so you'd better listen. Midichlorians are not the Force. Here's what Qui-Gon says. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. In other words, they just explain why some people are Force sensitive and others aren't, and why some people might be more in tune with the Force than others. They do not explain the Force itself.
In the Star Wars prequels, we know so much about the world and how it works.
And that makes the Star Wars universe really interesting. Seeing all these new planets and how the old Republic worked and how the old Jedi Order worked and how the Empire rose, it creates an even bigger universe and a new sense of wonder.
All while saying screw the characters and screw the plot. And avoiding something like that is of highest priority.
And yet again, you just assume that everybody must be anti-prequel because you are. And while we're on the subject, one of the reasons why I love Star Wars so much, along with other things like Harry Potter and Avatar: The Last Airbender, is because their universes are so vast and detailed. They're so intricately thought out that you can imagine them really existing.
To go for a more traditional explanation, think of the world like a magician on a stage. We know that he can't really pull a rabbit out of his hat, but we don't care because that's what the illusion is.
Says he who nitpicks cartoon jokes to high heaven. And if you didn't write it, you'd probably ask some of the same questions I ask. Like, for example, how does anyone in this universe learn to read or write when the kids don't go to school? Is everyone just born as a super baby or something? And why do the adults need to go to school when they should already know the stuff they're being taught? Do they get amnesia when they turn 18? There's a difference between maintaining a sense of wonder and just plain not giving a crap about whether or not a world makes sense.
You know, unless you're one of those people who do care and try to ruin the trick for everyone explaining how it's done, and make it boring and sterile.
Translation. Unless you're one of those people who critiques my universe and dares to actually ask questions about it.
Even works that have been risen into mass consciousness have plot-destroying plot holes that render their world unbelievable and illogical. Harry Potter, for instance.
And now you're putting your work in the same category as one of the most beloved stories from our modern age.
Tell me, within the first book, no word of God, no sequels.
If you're going to ignore the later books, then your argument already fails even before it starts.
Within the first book, why would any Muggle parent take their child out of school to stop learning math, science, and English to learn magic, something they probably only found out existed that day?
Well, within the world of the first book, Aunt Petunia says that when Lily got her letter, her parents said, "We have a witch in the family, isn't that wonderful?"
In a school where kids have a very real chance of dying. Was every situation like the Dursleys where they got kidnapped all year? If that was the case, I don't see the magical world staying hidden from muggles for very long.
Kidnapped? What do you mean kidnapped? The Dursleys explain Harry's absence by saying he's going to a school for incurably criminal boys. And as for the magical world being exposed, have you ever heard of the Obliviate spell? Yes, that was introduced in Book 2, but if you have to close your ears to the other books, then you haven't made a very good argument. A minor nitpick on the first Harry Potter book that does get later explained is not an excuse for you to not explain anything. Hell, as bland as Flip-Flopped was, it still explained stuff. According to the theme song, the people in that world aged backwards. Essentially, the kids were mentally adults, and the adults were mentally kids. Granted, that opens up a bunch of questions about things like reproduction, but at least it explained why the society is the way it is. In your world, the adults seem perfectly rational and able to take care of themselves, and yet they're either too scared or too stupid to realize that.
What people have to realize is that I was never trying to write the Silmarillion.
You are really protesting too much, you know that?
Speaking of that, we expect different things from The Hobbit than we do from Lord of the Rings. That's because The Hobbit is children's fantasy, and Lord of the Rings is adult fantasy.
But which one is more popular and is generally considered the better story? That's right, Lord of the Rings. And speaking of which, even as a standalone book, The Hobbit makes more sense than your world.
And they both have their strengths and weaknesses, and they have their features that you couldn't put in the other. I've always had a hard time taking criticism. Call it ego or anxiety or a bad childhood with way too much criticism or whatever.
And yet you look down on other people who can't take criticism. The hypocrisy is strong with this one.
Yeah, I'm a critic who has a hard time taking criticism. How ironic is that?
As you're so fond of saying, I know it's wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
If I was in an RPG, you could call me a glass cannon. But I will say that I have my reasons for not taking every little bit of criticism that comes my way.
You don't have to, but that doesn't make it right to publicly bitch about it.
First of all, there are people out there who do want me and my projects to fail. I have plenty of trolls who have a very concerned interest in watching me suffer. And I do know that there are plenty of people who would intentionally try to give me counterintuitive or broken information to make my project worse on purpose.
Have you ever thought about just why that is? Maybe it has to do with the rules on your DeviantArt page, or the time you bitched at a guy for going to college, or the time that you blocked everybody who dared to say that trolls and cyberbullies weren't the same thing, or the time that you used an entire review to bitch about getting requests, or the time you used your Asperger's as an excuse to not take criticism from anyone you don't personally know. Yes, some people are jerks, but quite a few of your antis, myself included, used to be fans before they got turned off by your behavior.
This is combined with a tendency on the internet to believe that disagreeing with a critic means that you can't take criticism, and that makes this a no-win situation.
Disagreeing with a critic is one thing. Publicly whining about getting criticism like you're doing is a whole other thing. And you know what? Even someone who's trying to bring you down can still have good points. In fact, this happened to me not long ago with one of my fanfictions. Someone posted multiple reviews about how awful the story was and how I should be ashamed for writing it, but in the midst of all the flaming, there was some good advice. He said the story was getting repetitive, and you know what? It was in danger of getting repetitive. So I kept that in mind and worked on making the story less repetitive. I didn't complain about it or get into a fight with him, I just picked out the good advice and used it. And the advice coming from someone who was being rude didn't make it any less of a good point.
This is why I tend to only really ask for criticism from people that I trust personally. People who won't lead me astray.
And you could have done that without posting the story on the internet and exposing yourself to criticism from all sorts of people. Once you've posted something on the internet, you've exposed it to the public.
People who won't tell me to put in something that makes the book worse. Or people who won't blindly let me do whatever the hell I want and George Lucas the whole thing.
You know, insulting George Lucas doesn't make your project any better. And given how much you whined in this video, I have a hard time believing that you listen to these, quote, people you trust.
And another thing, I'm going to sound amazingly egotistical when I say this, but giving criticism is harder than it looks.
So those meanies who give you criticism just plain don't know how to give criticism.
I've been doing reviews myself for years, and I still make mistakes and fall into traps all of the time. And I used to do it a lot more in the past. If I ever redo my Stuck in the Ringer review, I'll go into full depth with that.
Your Stuck in the Ringer review has little to do with anything here.
Sometimes a critic will place what they want in a work, rather than what might objectively be better. For example, if a critic really likes action, they might critique a more subdued work for being boring and, not having enough action in it.
How many excuses are you going to make here? It's starting to sound really pathetic.
This can be caused sometimes by an uncanny valley effect, where the person actually put too much action into their work, and it started to make people, like the critic, think that it was an action series when it just wasn't. The answer to solving that? It sounds really counterintuitive, but you have to do exactly the opposite of what that critic says, and remove the action that you have, in order to make your work even more subdued and quote-unquote boring.
What? What the hell are you saying? If you get critiqued for not having enough action in your story, you must reduce the action in it? Where's your source for that? What makes you think that's gonna work all the time? I mean, every story is different. You can't just make a generalization like that.
Sometimes, especially on the internet, people aren't very clear, and they don't communicate their feelings very well.
Okay, we get it. You can't take criticism, okay? Stop making all these excuses.
Even if they try, saying that a joke wasn't funny can mean 1,000 different things. From who the characters were, to how the joke was delivered, to the music that played afterwards, to the line delivery. Some people have a hard time striking at their own feelings and figuring out exactly what they don't like about your product.
So anytime you refuse to take criticism, it must be the critic's fault, not yours. Is that what you're saying?
On top of that, you never really know anyone's expertise for the respective genre.
You know, if the makers of, say, Teen Titans Go said half the stuff you're saying here, you'd probably be bashing them to high heaven.
When someone gives a criticism of Growing Around, I don't know how much children's fantasy that they watch or read, or the last time they read something new within the genre. For all I know, they could hate the genre and the conventions that make it what it is.
You know that argument could also apply to the people who praise your work, don't you? Maybe the people who like Growing Around don't know anything about children's fantasy. Or hell, since you block people left and right, maybe they're lying because they don't want to be blocked.
I have a habit of believing that people on the internet don't find children's fantasy their favorite genre of all time.
So now someone must have children's fantasy be their all-time favorite genre in order to be worthy of critiquing your work?
It should go without saying that knowing the conventions of a certain medium or genre is important to giving useful and reliable criticism, which
even someone who doesn't read a lot of children's fantasy can still be able to give good criticism about storytelling or character development or, logic.
Which is one of the reasons that I was so terrible back at the beginning. This is why I usually only take criticism from people I know and trust.
You said that already.
It's because I thoroughly know their experiences and their abilities, and I can trust them not to intentionally send me the wrong way, or give me praise that's unwarranted.
You are really sounding paranoid, you know that?
I need to know both their intentions and their abilities. The truth of the matter is that the book does need criticism, and a lot of it. But like bad or incorrect medicine can kill a patient, bad or incorrect criticism can kill the book.
If you're this paranoid about getting, quote, bad criticism, why did you post it on the internet? And seeing as how you seem to consider wanting some logic in your world to be bad criticism, I really again have to wonder about these people you, quote, trust.
Let me give you an example of how this plays out. One thing a lot of people criticize, demanding to know how the world works, or saying that it can't possibly work or they have too many questions about it.
Oh no, how dare they want some logic.
Here's what I'm doing to fix it. I'm changing the book from third person to Sally's first person. That sounds like a very bizarre decision, and on some level it is. I needed to be amazingly creative to figure this out. Here's the logic behind it. Sally has lived her whole life in the world of Growing Around, so there's plenty of questions she just wouldn't ask.
But the readers would still ask them.
To her, the grass is green, the sky is blue, and parents do what their kids say.
Kinda like how in the old days, the sky was blue, the grass was green, and women were property of their husbands. You can't just hand-wave away the adult slavery like that.
She's not the one to ask questions about it, since she's not the philosophical type. Just like you would not start a journal entry explaining why you're here on Earth, or that your mom and dad gave birth to you, she wouldn't start a first-person story explaining everything about her world, especially the mundane details.
In other words, you think you found an excuse to not explain stuff. Yet again, she might not ask questions, but your readers definitely will.
How our world works on that level might not even be something that she knows or cares about, beyond silly assumptions.
But again, the readers will. Do you really think making the book first person is going to magically make your readers stop asking questions?
And more importantly, when you get down to it, the book is about her and her interactions with the world, not just the world itself. A fantasy story is about the characters, not about the world.
But the world should also be developed enough to be believable.
And the story is about Sally Dunn trying to become the mayor of her town. Why is it told in the world of Growing Around? Well, because I can't exactly have a story about a child becoming the mayor of a town in the real world. Unless, I was doing like a full-fledged comedy. And the world paints the plot, like it should in any fantasy story. Even if I was doing this in the real world and changed it to Sally trying to become class president to embarrass the popular girl, it would be a vastly different story, and it would lose what makes it what it is.
Actually, it would probably be a better story because it wouldn't involve adults becoming slaves.
Deep inside, Growing Around is a coming-of-age story.
In a world where coming of age means you lose your freedom. Huh. Anyway, now he finally starts talking about the actual story and characters, which I'm going to skip because I don't really want to repeat myself too much. By the way, only about 4 minutes out of a 16-minute video are spent actually talking about the story and characters. The rest of it is spent bitching about criticism or coming up with excuses. Anyway, before we go, I have one last little thing to show you.
Right now, the novel needs a lot of work. And like I said, I'm getting people that I know and trust to help me work on it. When it's as polished as it could possibly be, I'll self-publish it with one of the artists making all of the art for it, and the voice actors and I will do an audiobook. From there, who knows what happens. If you'd like to read what I currently have, the first draft is available through the link below. Keeping in mind with what I said here, tell me what you think. I'd love to hear it.
So after all that bitching about criticism, now he wants to know what you think. Let me guess, he only wants to know what you think if you've got positive things to say. Otherwise, he'll just dismiss you as giving bad criticism.